bastard! Conductor of the choir of death! Sing, brother! Sing! Sing!
No. Thank you so much for I do appreciate you all showing up to Writers Showcase number 151. I'm your host, Lord Captain Commander Dunn. Let me bring in some of my friends. First off, Perion.
Are you out of... Start raving! Totally blinking death!
What the bleep was that?
Turn Treasure Planet, and it's what you often ask in regards to me.
What? Why do you exist?
No, it's are you stark raving, totally blinking death?
Well, okay, pretty much. Yes, that's the meat of it. That's the meat of it. Let's see what's happening. Let's see. Sorry, just looking around. Well, are you going to bring Axelon or not?
I am. Right. Let's bring in Mr. Oxula.
So he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Ouch. Damn.
Well, the road.
Damn. I wasn't expecting that for my introduction. Roasted. Hello, everybody.
No, it's what you often say about other people. So
I do.
Like Rings of Power people.
I was not aware.
Well, that's what I say about the Rings of Power people.
Oh, well, yeah. Definitely. Definitely agreed on anything that has to do with that production. Well, looks like we might have a low turnout this week, everybody. It'd be cool if, I don't know, anyone else could join in. What was his name? Man 2, or shoot, I forgot the name that he goes by.
Cameraman, is that it?
Yeah, he can't come. Said school stuff. Wissia most likely can't either.
Yeah,
Carl
he'll be
is
fine.
MIA.
Carl is
Most
probably
likely busy.
He's probably fomenting revolution somewhere.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Welcome, Neil.
Oh, they're actually humans now?
Yep. One person in chat. Well, hopefully my friends that I send this to see this later. Raptor, Codex, Angel, if you're seeing this in the future, what's up? I think this might be my strongest chapter yet. Yeah, I have a good feeling about this one.
Cool. So I can't go yet because I'm about to go to lunch, which means I'll probably be at it for a while too.
Okie dokie. Done. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Done deal. Get it?
Going too long. I forgot to count the pages, but I think the flow is pretty good. So if it drags on too long, just stop me. Okay, I'll do a recap for everybody now and in the future. So this is my novel Stradia, which is a sci-fi thriller taking place in the far future. In chapter 1, we opened immediately with the inciting incident, which is a wormhole leap. I'm calling it a wormhole leap, not a wormhole jump. It's a little cliche. Starts inside of a wormhole that goes terribly wrong. And the turbulence is so excessive that people are quite literally thrown into the ceiling and then thrown back down. Luggage is destroyed. A lot of property is destroyed. People suffer injuries. And so during the middle of the wormhole, our main character, Markin, sees hallucinations that are kind of horrifying. First, he sees his friend next to him. He sees his face melt off. And then outside the glass of the ship, he sees hands in space, a lot of them, like hundreds of them, pounding on the glass. And he's not the only one that sees it. And so then, after suffering a concussion and waking up later with the doctor, who is an alien, she reads his mind and determines that no, he's not going insane. And she is also able to see briefly what he saw. And both of them are just frankly baffled by it. So that dismisses the fact that it could be insanity, that something weird is going on here. And so that's chapter 1. And chapter 2, briefly, he, after meeting with the doctor, who is his friend Tavico, who will show up again in this chapter here, he goes to meet with the captain of the ship. And on his way there, he runs into his friend Tanik, who was the one that he watched his face melt off. And they just banter a little bit, and Markin can't stop thinking about what he saw. And then he meets with the captain, and on his way to her office, he overhears a conversation between her and the emissary of the Earth's United Nations. And he overhears that they passed through an anomaly. He wasn't supposed to hear that. And when he comes in, the emissary is pretty cartoonish. Not really my intention there. I was just trying to make a scumbag, or kind of like an asshole character. So I'll probably rework that a little bit. But basically what I'm going for is he's kind of just that like sleazy politician type of character who like thinks the world revolves around them, or in this case, the universe. And so let's see. Yep, he meets with the captain. The captain confronts him on that after the emissary goes away, and then reveals that, yes, we passed through an anomaly, and no, we don't know what it is or why it occurred, but that's what caused the extreme turbulence during the wormhole leap. And then after meeting with her and discussing all of that, she threatens him. She threatens Markin and says, if you speak to anyone about this, I will kill you myself. And so then the chapter ends where they see Pluto, similar to my profile picture right there, where they see it start to appear in the glass, and everyone on board is celebrating and cheering and like throwing up their belongings like a graduation ceremony. And so the captain orders everyone to meet in the meeting hall for a speech, or for like an introduction ceremony. And so that's where we left off, and that's where we start now. Okay. So everyone, am I going through fine? Wow, I feel like I'm alone in here. Okay. I guess I'll just start then. Okay, so in between each chapter, let me show you. Let's do a share screen really quick. So, I think Dunn has to give permission for that. So in between each chapter, we have quotes here from Johann Astara, and what the quotes imply is that he's the founder of Austradia, and Austradia is pretty much a metropolis paradise resort that was built on Pluto. And so, yep, in between each chapter, you get a quote here that's relevant to how the last one ended or how the new one is going to begin. And then the chapters are called phases, and we'll find out why they're called phases in this one here. So this is phase 3, the blackout, which was briefly mentioned in the last one, where Captain Moon was saying that she believes the anomalies are originating from Pluto, and Markin is just like blown away by it, and he briefly asks, could that be what's causing the blackout? And she says, we believe so. So we'll find out what that is here. So let's begin. I don't just want Australia to be like Vegas. I want it to be better. You know, I always loved that place. From its inception in ancient Earth to its trials and tribulations over the centuries ladder, to its revival and reinvigoration. The nations of Earth came and went, but Vegas remained. I love that. I've always found that to be an incredible inspiration to me. And that is one of my greatest motivators to building Australia here with you all today. When you hear the ancient phrase, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I want everyone who visits Australia to say, what happens in Pluto makes me never want to leave. When visitors traveling across the old United States visited Las Vegas to party, to gamble, to have a great time, I want the same opportunity to be available. Oops, sorry, I lost my place. For all of our interstellar friends and families across the stars. Come, all you travelers, far and wide. Enjoy our luxury hotels, our remarkable wildlife, our fantastical auroral lights. When you find yourselves traveling across abroad to Kular and beyond, or if you're returning back home here to Earth or any of our brilliant colonies here on all of our wondrous moons, be sure to stop by and give Australia a visit while you're at it. What are you waiting for? Come on down! Johanna Starr, in his speech to the media during the final construction phases of Australia, Pluto Orbit 5183. All right, Chapter 3, Phase 3, Blackout. I'm going to take a sip of water before I start. The crowds erupted like a concert in the meeting hall. I had never been in a room so overcrowded in my life. As I faked my smile with Tanik and Tavika clapping next to me, I couldn't stop thinking about Captain Moon as we stood up there, smiling and taking in the applause from the crowds like a happy-go-lucky politician. Despite being surrounded by literally thousands of cheering masses, I had never felt more alone. I really could have used that third shot, I thought. Captain Moon stood at the front of the massive room on an elevated platform like a stage or a concert. Surrounded on all sides by 20 armed military soldiers with her, her arms were both raised high as she waited for us to quiet down. To her right, Emissary Grand simply stood with his hands clasped together, standing tall and looking sharp like another stereotypical politician. Behind him and the captain were 3 massive walls of glass, giving a perfect, unhindered view of the aurora borealis lights of Pluto as they danced and simmered across all of our faces in vibrant shades. That is a typo. Should be in, not on. As they danced and simmered across all of our faces in vibrant shades of green, purple, and blue. We were finally orbiting Pluto. I smiled as I thought of Seda and our dream to come here one day. I stood up on my tippy toes as I continued clapping along with the crowds, turning my head in every direction to see if I could spot her. She's here, Markin. Tavika was clapping too on my right as she turned her head. She's here. Quit your puppy eyes there, lover boy. My cheeks flushed hot as I turned away. Tanik laughed way too loudly on the other side of me. I punched him in the chest. Ow! What in worm's filth did I do? Prick. Takes one to know one. I punched him again. He cursed loudly. Boys, Tavika hissed. Ugh, so annoying. We laughed louder. Attention, everyone! Moon's voice boomed loudly all around us as the speakers amplified her voice. As you can see, the scene behind me needs no introduction. The crowds instantly erupted into loud applause as she held up both hands again. I know many of you here today have been waiting decades for this moment. Believe me, I have too. I am honored to be your chosen captain for this historic reclamation. Applause. This was a tumultuous journey, and I want to sincerely apologize to you all today for the excessive turbulence we experienced in that wormhole leap just shy of 3 hours ago. Grumblings began from the crowd. As a token of my apology, all personal belongings that were destroyed, as well as any physical damage and medical expenses, will be personally paid for by me and me alone, in full. I want to offer you all my most sincere apologies as your captain. We are hard at work trying to discover the cause and the reason for what happened, so we may never experience such an unpleasant or unwelcome phenomena again. The grumblings continued. Was it a black hole? A man shouted as loud as he could somewhere to my right. Angry voices around him began to rise in agreement. It was not a black hole, Moon replied confidently. The President, myself, and the UNE can all personally reassure you there are no black holes in Sol. We would be losing planets and moons right now if there were. Then what was that darkness? A woman shouted. My daughter said she saw things, another woman to my left screamed. She's not well. Is this a new strain of fatigue? I'm worried sick. Please, do something. The crowds erupted. Here we go. Tavika leaned in and whispered in my ear. I just simply nodded. I couldn't take my eyes off of Captain Moon. For a brief moment, she spotted me, narrowed her eyelids, and then continued looking around at the entire crowd. Everyone, please! The noises slowly dissipated. She lowered her hands. I know you are all worried and very confused. I want to assure you, as captain of the Reclamation, that we are working as quickly and as effectively as we can to get to the bottom of this. We are still investigating whether or not we may have jumped through Neptune or Saturn. Should be leaped. Let me fix that. I want everyone to be reassured that you are in safe hands. We didn't pass through Neptune or Saturn. Tavika leaned in and mumbled in my ear. We didn't leap through any planets or moons. I looked over at her. Within all four of Tavika's gray Ixani eyes, I saw worry and concern. She looked like she was wondering if I was okay. And she also looked like she wanted me to tell her if I knew anything from meeting with the captain earlier. I simply nodded and looked back ahead. I couldn't tell her even if I wanted to. Can I have your attention here, please? Moon immediately changed the subject as she snapped at the air. Instantly, large monitor screens flew out from the console up front and phased into existence above all of our heads. Like televisions hanging from the ceiling of an indoor concert, a few dozen digital projection screens that were about 50 feet long and 40 feet wide formed in perfect lines above every 5 rows of seats. They all projected the same exact thing as every head looked up and the lights dimmed low. Music began to play as a visual of Earth materialized, the letters U, N, and E slowly rolling over it as it zoomed out dramatically. I laughed and nudged Tavika's shoulder. Universal Studios, I whispered. Shut up, she laughed and punched my shoulder. That's so stupid, Markin. Tanik and a few other angry faces leaned over to glare at us. What in worm's filth is a Universal Studios? Me and Tavika held our hands to our faces to hold in our laughs. Tanik punched my shoulder. Hey, he whispered sharply. Answer me! As the cliche inspirational music track played, the letters slowed down and stopped as the spinning image... The letters slowed and stopped as the spinning image of the globe... across the spinning image of the globe as text reading the United Nations of Earth appeared below them. Immediately, the screens transitioned to the smiling face of President Hiran Grath. May the stars yield warmth upon you. Welcome aboard the Reclamation B-19 Pluto bound. I would like to extend a personal and heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you. Beginning his usual scripted politician speech, the president of Earth introduced himself and thanked every volunteer on board as he began to drone on and on about the obvious goals of the expedition. I saw Tanik roll his eyes to my left and I chuckled. As Grath continued, I looked back up at the screens and studied his perfect golden face as he showed all of his teeth with a wide and vibrant smile. Like Captain Moon, he was also a Dust War veteran. He was dressed in a presidential red and black uniform / suit, with short red hair, green eyes, and a large, bulky build. I watched his eyes as I imagined this man hammering into Captain Moon, cussing her out like the emissary did in her office earlier, and I had a hard time visualizing it. Seeing his smile before us on those screens, it was hard to picture this man ever being angry. Before I knew it, without even listening, Grath gave his final thank yous, and he faded away as the UNE logo appeared on the screen once again. I half expected to hear the Universal theme song play as the screens faded to black. By the way, guys, I don't know what's going on, but my microphone keeps turning down. Am I still going through? Right now it's turned up to 3, but it keeps turning down to 1. And
You're fine.
Still audible.
Okay. I think that's something that Streamlabs does. Okay, I'll turn it back down to 1. As long as I'm going through, that's fine. Just want to make sure I'm not too quiet. Moon immediately snapped at the air as the screen switched to a diagram of the solar system. In the center was the sun, labeled Sol, surrounding it were all of our home worlds and their colonies, listed on the screens that they orbited the star in real time. Half of the heads turned to her as she began to pace the stage. Uranus, Neptune. Moon stopped and pointed outside the glass. Pluto. She paused for a second as she continued pacing with her hands behind her back. 43 moons, 68 colonies, 17 kingdoms, and 314 tribes. She snapped at the air again. The screen changed to show the last 2 planets on the outer perimeter, and the tiny dot that was Pluto next to them. All of them blacked out visually with question marks inside of the circles. Meanwhile, the other planets remained lit up and vibrant. No response from any of these worlds on radio wave messaging. Taking into account the travel time of the speed of light, all light ray messages take approximately 2.7 hours to reach Uranus and its moons from Earth, 4.3 hours to reach Neptune from Earth, and, she pointed outside to Pluto again behind the glass, 4 hours and 27 minutes to reach Australia from Earth. Moon paused as she slowly panned her eyes across the entire audience. Some began to murmur quietly. 4 months and 13 days. Over 100,000 repeated radio attempts. Not one response. Not one. You all know this event as the blackout. Moon snapped at the air again, and the screens highlighted the 3 worlds, then zoomed in closer to them. Below the 3 planets, text appeared that read the blackout. It also appears that not one of these worlds nor their adjacent moons have been able to reach us as well. Moon huffed as she spoke, eyeing us all sharply. Her authority was incredible. She had everyone completely engaged. You all know the seriousness of this implication. We have tried to send scouting ships and drones, and despite the worm conduits sending them successfully to these worlds, only half returned. Worried whispers began to arise behind me. Moon paused as she stood up straight and slowly panned her eyes over all of us. I'm actually going to take that out. That's kind of repetitious from previously. I'll just go straight to the quote. Worried whispers arose behind me. Australia is safe. Fear not. We have received word back, but an evacuation had occurred sometime in the past 4 years. No one who lived or vacationed there had any explanation nor answers as to what happened. Many of them reported strange sightings, and all of them reported that the power was mysteriously shut down, with no explanation on how or why. This is why I called you all here today in this meeting hall. Before we begin Phase 4 and descend down there, something is amiss in Australia. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to you all our team of skilled intelligence and expertise, our chosen and trained operatives who will help us in this operation. There's our cue. Oh no, there's our cue, Tanik whispered to me as he nudged my shoulder. May the stars shine bright, you two, Tavika whispered to us both as we smiled and nodded back. We immediately began to make our way out of the masses, moving and apologizing to the horde surrounding us as we shuffled through the maze of bodies to the outer window walls. I stood on my tippy toes as I looked around for moving heads, hoping one of them would be Seda. I couldn't see any golden hair yet, but I did see many other humans and Exani in the crowd moving to the windows too along with us. Me and Tanik made our way to the left of the hall with about 50 others, while the other 50 or so lined up to the right. First and most importantly, Moon continued, I hereby introduce to you all our mechanical intelligence operatives, our most vital assets to restoring Australia's technology and finding out exactly what and how the power was shut down. None of us would be here today without these essential operatives and their priceless contributions to this expedition. Mechanical intelligence officers, I invite you all a warm, sun-braced welcome to the stage. May you please? Extending her hand as an invitation, me and Tanik watched as around 30 out of the 100 of us on the outer perimeter walked up to the stage with Captain Moon as the audience began to clap. Men, women, and Exani alike, they all looked like tech junkies, some definitely more stereotypically nerdy than others, which made logical sense considering their skill sets, as they all walked up there and stood side by side on the stage. Making her way through each member, Moon stood in front of them and shook their hands as their faces projected up on the screens above. By the time she finished, the 30 mechanical officers, the 30 or so mechanical officers, all bowed down as the crowds applauded. Next, I would like to introduce our heads, the chiefs of intelligence that I have personally assigned to this expedition. Each of these fine men and women will help lead our mechanical officers to success. Tannic Brand, Chief Intelligence of Linguistics. I invite you here to the stage. May you please. Moving on cue, Tannic smiled to me as he walked up the steps. The audience clapped and I joined them as he stood proudly in front of the 30, placing his hands behind his back. Tannic raised his chin up as he faced the crowds with a smile, while the captain walked up to him and held out her hand. May the stars shine bright on your successes down there in paradise, Mr. Brand. They shook and Tannic blushed. I snorted as I tried not to laugh. Moon turned back around to the audience. Showing perfect understanding in both English and Takanith in their entirety, Mr. Brand will help us solidify our understandings of one another as we meet the Pluto-born Ixani down there in Australia. Our technology can indeed translate both languages, but I wanted to assure you all that there is no one better and no one more fluent in both English and Takanith than Mr. Brand here. We do not know what we will face down there, nor if the blackout will affect any of our technologies. So if any of you need any assistance at any point in linguistics or translational assistance, that's repetitious translations. Be sure to see Mr. Brand for any questions immediately. A round of applause rose as Tannic shook her hand once again. He blushed deeply as he gave a humble bow to the crowds. I looked over from where we came and smirked at Tavika as she stood there clapping. We both rolled our eyes at each other as we held in our laughs. It was never not funny to either of us that somehow our earthborn jokester that was our best friend Tannic Brand knew more Takanith than Tavika and Ixani herself. It was often teased among the three of us that he had to teach her words of her own language, which was often embarrassing and led to fuel to the fire that was our jokes. Since she was born and raised on Earth, she wasn't entirely fluent in her people's native tongue like the Pluto-born or other outer worldly-born Ixani. I suppose that's what extremely hard work earned Tannic, 21 years straight of ruthless studying. He won himself a free trip to Atlantis. Next up, we cannot forget about Australia's wonderful wildlife. The screens above began to show a slideshow of koalas, giraffes, pandas, cats, dogs, deer, and all kinds of wild earth animals as the crowds cheered and awed. Some of the visuals were extremely adorable, like the puppies or the pandas, as they showed their big black eyes on the screens. That was definitely intentional. Seda, son, Captain Moon shouted. She held out her hand next to Tannic. Head Chief of Pluto's Wildlife Preservation. May you please? My heart leapt in my chest. Seda emerged from the other side of the room and walked up the stairs to the stage. As the applause began, I clapped and cheered far louder than everyone else around me as I cupped my hands to my mouth and shouted. She looked absolutely breathtaking, dressed in a well-fitting and frankly sexy-looking suit, identical to the ones me, Tannic, and the rest of us chiefs of intelligence were all wearing. Seda's son smiled and blushed deeply at all the clapping and the attention. She turned away with red cheeks, holding her hands over her eyes in embarrassment from the crowd. Moon reached out her hand and Seda grabbed it without looking at the captain and shook it rapidly. She tiptoed next to Tannic and stood in place as Captain Moon, Tannic, and the entire audience laughed and cheered. She was adorable. May the stars shine bright on your successes down there, Miss Sun. Moon chuckled as she tapped Seda's shoulder. The captain held one hand on her and the other she waved towards the screens. As you all can see, Miss Sun's role is also extremely vital. What is Australia without its wonderful exotic wildlife? The crowds erupted into cheers and the screen showed elephants, hippos, stingrays, exotic fish, penguins, and panning shots of the hundreds of miles of gorgeous jungles, rivers, and lakes that surrounded the City of Lights itself. Miss Sun is a lifelong trained Earth veterinarian, as well as a much-beloved and respected animal caretaker at the New York Zoo that she has worked in for the past 10 years. We do not know what may have happened to the wildlife in Australia during the blackout, so I encourage you all, any and all questions or inquiries, or any sightings of animals in need of help in any way, please see Miss Sun immediately. Everyone applauded loudly as cheers rang out throughout the crowd. Nothing like a kind soul to look look after the animals to instantly move an audience. I had the biggest smile on my face as I screamed her name loudly and clapped above my head. Facing the crowd, Seda blushed some more as she bowed rapidly many times before scanning the audience and finally finding me. Our eyes met and my heart melted. Seda smiled wide and nearly teared up. I held up my right hand above my head and cupped it into half of a heart shape as I blew her a kiss with my other. Seda giggled and closed her eyes from smiling so wide. Her hands twitched, but she stopped herself. Knowing not to draw attention to me or to make a horde of eyes turn in my direction, she simply kept her hands by her waist as she used her right hand to form half of a heart upside down right there by her side. My real heart melted. I had never been so happy in my life to see her. It had been a long and troubling day since the turbulence, and an even longer and more troubling few years since we had first met in a New York museum, and both worked hard to make sure we can both be here. Sorry, that's I messed that up. And worked hard to make sure we could both be here. We were finally going to Australia. Markin Frost! Moon shouted my name loudly as my stomach instantly lurched. Head Chief of Pluto Intelligence. Well-versed in all things Yahan Astara, Dyax, and Astradia. Our map and our guide if any issues arise down there, and if any of our technologies fail us at any point. Moon held out her hand next to Tannic and Seda as she met eyes with me. May you please? Oh, worm piss, I thought to myself as my heart beat rapidly in my chest. Here we go. The moment I had been dreading. Breathing deeply, I slowly made my way nervously up to the stage. Seda, Tannic, and the 30 behind them cheered and clapped for me, and I smiled back at them both as I approached. As I turned around and stood in my spot next to Tannic, the applause from the audience instantly stopped and went dead silent. I looked ahead at the thousands of faces before me, and exactly as expected, I saw them. Death glares. Every time, I thought to myself. Every soul-forsaken time. God, I wish I could have had that third drink. Looking up, I saw the monitors broadcasting my face in vivid detail across hundreds of screens, just like they did for Tannic and Seda. On them, it showed my pearly white hair, my neon green eyes, and my charcoal-colored skin, displayed for all to see. It was blindly obvious that I was a Moonborn, and as I looked around, I tried to keep up my smile as long as I could, as all I saw in return was anger and eyes that looked outraged. Moon walked towards me and held out a hand. Turning and facing the crowd, she squinted her eyes as we shook hands, glaring at the audience and never looking once at me. May the stars shine bright on your successes down there, Mr. Frost. Her voice was low and sharp. Sounding normal in front of me, she was amplified by the speakers, and as it bounced throughout the entire hall, it was only met by an eerie silence. Moon let go without facing me and stomped forward on the stage angrily. I want to make something abundant and clear. Her tone was sharp. Her tone was as sharp as a knife. Half of the heads turned to look at her. Some were startled. Others continued glaring. I know what you all are thinking, and I will not be tolerating it aboard my expedition, nor within Australia. I choose my heads of intelligence. I do. She paused as she turned her head slowly from left to right. The dust war is over. I want you all to know that these three, she turned and pointed at us, are my heads of intelligence, head and chief intelligence officers. All three of these men and women are vital to this reclamation. Do you understand me? We are united, all of us. I will not tolerate any division or dissuasion among this crew or in this mission. Reclaiming Pluto is our top priority and our purpose here. Do I make myself clear? Dead silence. There was no mumblings this time. Not a soul dared to object. Moon stood still and panned her head slowly, breathing, or panned her head, should probably change that, breathing heavily like an angry bull as she placed her hands behind her back. Like a charm, she was able to ease the death glares, and now only a few of the faces in the crowd were still glaring at me. The rest were either looking down at their feet or away in shame. Thank the sun, I thought to myself. Thank you, Captain. Moon huffed and turned back towards me as she placed a hand on my shoulder. Looking directly into my eyes, she pierced my very soul with an expression that was chilling. I expect only the best from you, Chief Pluto Intelligence. I felt goosebumps as she let go and turned back around. Shouting out the next name, the crowds began to clap again. Meanwhile, I felt like my stomach had turned in on itself. The way Moon said it to the crowd, it sounded like a compliment. To me, however, it was a threat. She gave me the same threatening glare that she did earlier. You did great, Moon brother, Tannic whispered as he nudged me with his elbow. Nothing you could have done about that, Mark. It was inevitable. Indeed it was. I shook my head disappointedly. My smile was long gone as I mindlessly clapped. The next person Moon called up was an Ixani doctor, Mr. Pramid, a renowned chief head of healthcare. He was the reason Tavika was not up here with us. She wasn't quite a doctor yet, and Pramid had her outdone by about 10 years of experience. The next after him was Emissary Gran, whom Moon encouraged any political questions or inquiries to go to. He remained where he was to the side of the stage as he bowed, waving at everyone. Moon continued on with more names and introductions as I lost track and was no longer paying attention. My heart was heavy, and my thoughts began to grow dark. As I stood there frowning, all light and joy had completely gone from my face as each and every introduction leading to applause made my own sting and hurt so much more. I knew I was hated for being here on this expedition, but I didn't know the prejudice for my people ran that deep. It hurt to finally see it face to face like that. A hand gently touched my side and nearly made me jump. I looked over to see Seda standing next to me. Seda, I whispered. I was shocked. I didn't even realize she slowly moved past Tannic and traded places with him. Take the hand, stupid, she whispered, smiling wide. Tannic snorted next to her. I audibly went, ah, as I lowered my hands. Snatching it instantly, Seda interlocked our fingers as she squeezed it tight. I felt like life was flowing back into me. The warmth of her hand was invigorating, and I slowly felt a smile return to my face. I looked over and gazed at the beautiful woman standing next to me. Standing proud at about 6 foot tall, only a few feet lower than me, Seda's sun was the most gorgeous thing in the universe. Long golden flowing hair, with streaks of red interwoven through it, Seda turned to meet my gaze as I peered deeply into the purple irises of her own eyes. I was entranced. Like an ocean made of lavender, her eyes looked like a supernova of a gorgeous dark star explosion. They were the most beautiful things I had ever seen. Idiot! She hissed quietly, blushing. Taking her hand out of mine, she poked me on the ribs. Ow! I whispered, flinching. Crowd, silly! Seda tilted her head towards the masses, smiling giddily, reminding me that we were on a stage. I blushed myself as I choked on my laugh. I wanted to break out into coughs, but I forced it in as not to draw unwanted attention to her or myself. We both raised our hands and clapped along with the crowds as Moon introduced the next and final name. Colonel Lionel Brax! Applause. I love you, I whispered. Seda turned to me and squealed with excitement under her breath. We made it, Marquis. We did it. I grabbed her hand and kissed it, not giving a care in the world about who might be seeing us or watching. She instantly pulled it away, blushing heavily as she nervously scanned the audience. We both giggled to ourselves as Tannic looked over and snorted, shaking his head. Now I want to emphasize something extremely important. Moon's voice was loud, and she instantly caught all of our attention. King Oric VII of Taken has expressed worry and concern for the worlds afflicted by the blackout. She snapped at the air, and the screen showed the blacked out worlds again as it zoomed out to show the closest unaffected neighbor, Saturn. Ever since we lost contact with all of the worlds past Uranus, many lives from the colonies and kingdoms of these 3 worlds have fled to his kingdom in the Saturnian rings for refuge, and he has reported both to the UNE and the Martian magistrate that many have displayed signs of hysteria and lunacy. You could hear a pin drop. As Moon explained the situation, Colonel Lionel Brax made his way up to the stage. A massive man, he looked like a living tank. He was so tall and bulky that he looked like he could easily throw a car. He passed by all of us to stand at his spot as he emotionlessly glazed over us. That's him, Tannic whispered, leaning over. Seda and I looked over at him. Brax, Tannic explained. He ended the Dust War. Me and Seda looked at each other with wide eyes as we then looked back ahead at the back of Colonel Brax. He was a 10-foot tall, 500-pound, massive behemoth of a Mars-born man. As I looked up at the monitors above, we saw the face of the hardened war hero. He had the usual Mars-born reddish clay-like skin with green eyes. He was clean-shaven except for the massive and intimidating scar covering most of the top of his head and going through his right eye, removing any trace of an eyebrow that was once there. Judging from the scar, this man must have suffered one hell of a blow during the war, and it was hard to tell if he had any replacement eyes or not. He most likely did. Or it was hard to tell if he had a replacement eye or not. He most likely did. He was dressed fully in the same red and black military uniform as the captain, and he was also fully equipped with war attire. Bulletproof vests, knee pads, arm pads, ammo packs, and military gear, and holding a massive assault pressure rifle almost as tall as him. The crowd's eyes were wide as they looked at the intimidating figure standing next to the captain, towering over all of us as he gazed coldly ahead. Moon shook Brax's hand like she did the rest of us. May the stars shine bright on your successes down there, Colonel. Brax only nodded slowly as the captain turned back around. President Grath and I have assembled the best of the best. She waved at all of us on the stage. The best intelligence and the best soldiers. She waved at Brax next. This is why I have saved the second most important for last. Moon placed her hands behind her back as she began to pace the stage. The lives of our technicians and our intelligence staff are extremely vital to this reclamation. This is why we will be working with Colonel Brax and his entire ground operations strike units, as if we were in a war zone. We do not know what to expect, and we still have no answers from the rest of the 157 other reclamations currently exploring Neptune and Uranus. I myself will be providing orbital overwatch both militarily and directionally. We will be prepared for anything. Murmurs began again from the crowd. That is why Colonel Brax and I will be leading and surveying the entire expedition on the ground with each and every last one of you. Safety of our staff and all of your livelihoods is my utmost top priority. Restoration of Australia is our second. She snapped at the air as screens then changed to a gorgeous image of Australia, which looked like an advertisement poster for Atlantis itself. Immediately, the sheer beauty of the image before us brought forth a few cheers and excited shouts from the crowds. Seda squeezed my shoulder and leaned in close to me as she squealed with excitement. I wrapped my arm around her as she smiled as we both looked up at the screens. So with that being said, I will not be delaying you all any further. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get to it. Moon clapped her hands twice as all of the screens instantly shot away and the lights came back on. May the stars shine bright upon all of you. It is time to initiate Phase 4. Let's get started. Or let's get to work, everyone. And that's the end. I don't know how long I went for, so I apologize if I bored you guys to sleep at all. I don't know how long that was.
Yeah, you went for about 40 minutes.
40?
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean 40? Wait, how long have we been streaming?
We've been going for 40 minutes. You started reading about 5 minutes, about 3 to 3, maybe 4 minutes after we started, and we've been live for about 44 minutes.
On the other hand, I've been eating lunch the whole time, so it's all good.
Damn. Okay.
That's why I
didn't
was
realize it was that long.
That's
I mean,
why
it was a pretty important scene, like something you'd see in a movie. Like one of those like initiation scenes before going into like on a big expedition, I guess. Damn. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how many pages that was or how many words it was. I forgot to count, but as I was editing and I kept editing the chapter, I said, this feels right. This flows well. It's natural. Yeah, this feels ready for presentation. Well, I mean, I guess with that being said, was it how was the scene?
I think it was pretty good. The style's better.
Yeah, I definitely took into account everything I heard from the past two um showcases. I tried to describe like as little as I possibly could. Like when the audience is cheering, I just literally write applause, just one word. And I just tried to focus mostly on the dialogue because there was a lot to get through.
Hmm. Interesting, because yeah, I did notice. I did notice there wasn't as much description and more
Yeah.
very focused on the dialogue.
Yeah, especially since it's, an initiation ceremony, so that's you got to focus on that for that kind of scene. But there was a lot to get through here. This was pretty much an exposition dump, but done in a really natural, organic way, like the best medias usually do it. Instead of just like throwing it on the audience, it's like everything that the captain is talking about, everyone on board knows about, but she also revealed some information that they didn't know about. So it was our first time finding out, and everyone there finding out as well. So it was the usual, like, as you all know, the blackout is this, but we have also, ever since we blah 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 blah, we haven't heard from blah 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 blah, and this that this that, and then that was a good time to introduce each of the vital characters to the story and introduce why our main characters are on board. And yeah, thank you, Neil. I really liked how you trusted the reader with characterization and very smartly conveyed exposition, and even got the main character's description done. Yeah, I didn't want to just throw in a random Markin description in the first two chapters because this is in first person, so if it was in third person, yeah, there would be a time and space for that. But I figured when I first was coming up with the story, I thought, oh yeah, when they're on stage and the captain's introducing everyone and his face is being broadcast across like hundreds of monitors all at once, and everyone's dead silent because they're not happy that a Moonborn is on board. That's a good time to describe the main character, what he looks like.
Yeah, I was a little
So yeah.
surprised that one or two didn't applaud, but I guess they were. I guess there was, what's the word I'm looking for, peer pressure not to applaud. So even
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, people who weren't
Pretty much. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
because I would figure some people would be enlightened enough that they wouldn't have a go at him just because he was a moon person, but maybe they were afraid of the other people.
Yeah, you could say that was some of the faces that looked down in shame, and some of the ones who were staring.
Yeah,
So I've been teasing it and building up to it up to this point through the first two chapters, and in the next one he's gonna get into a confrontation. Some soldiers are gonna push him around and beat him up, pretty much. Like one of those scenes. Think of like Hacksaw Ridge, where the guys in the barracks beat up Desmond because they called him a coward for not wielding a gun. It's pretty much like that kind of scene in the next chapter. And so, obviously, Markin was explaining it that it's because of the war. And so my inspiration for this actually was is two things: prejudice and history after a really rough event that happens. Think about how the United States treated the Japanese citizens when Pearl Harbor happened, and also think about how the United States treated Muslims when 9/11 happened. It's pretty much just like that. Markin was born on the moon, and Moonborn attacked Mars, killed a lot of people. It'll be explained a little bit later what happened in the Dust War. And Martians and Earthborn do not like them. They look at them with like narrow eyes and that kind of same accusatory, like, you're a terrorist, like what we did to Islamic people right after the 9/11 attacks happened. And it's not fair. It's not fair at all. And I just wanted to explore that in this story. I thought it would be an interesting subject to explore in a interstellar, like multi-planet, multi-moon type of story. I thought that would be really interesting.
Yeah, sounds good. So who at the beginning was narrating on about how wonderful Pluto's Vegas was? Because if there's a blackout, then clearly Pluto's Australia thing is not so wonderful now, right?
Yeah. So that's Johan, the founder. He'll be introduced a little bit later, but it's kind of implying that. So in chapter 1, it begins with his speech to the board of directors about building a paradise on Pluto and taking that bold step all the way out there into like the pitch black darkness. And it was his speech that he gave to like the investors that turned their heads and got their attention. And then in chapter 2, in that one, same guy, he talks about lights. He talks about building lights and starting the Borealis initiative. I called it the Aurora Project, but Lucia pointed out that that's in Warhammer, so it's like, oh, that's a little cliche of a name. Actually, I'll call it the Borealis Initiative, and basically, it's where they engineered Aurora Borealis lights around all of Pluto to light it up naturally, since there's no trace of sun. And that's what they're seeing in the ship right now. And so then we had this quote where he was talking about Vegas and how much he likes it, and he likes that it's still around in like, when did he say that quote? 5183. This takes place in 5183, and Vegas is still around. And Johan really likes that, and that's one of his biggest inspirations. So yeah, that's it's the founder of the city. So this takes place like centuries in the past, or like I haven't figured out a timeline yet. How long do I want it to be around before the blackout happened? The blackout happened like 4 years prior to chapter 3 here, and it happened right in the middle of the war. So they didn't notice it at first, and then now the reclamation expeditions are going out. And as Captain Moon explained, they're on board the most important one because Australia is a lot more important than Uranus or Neptune. Sorry, Uranus or Neptune, you're not as important as Australia. That's more important. But yeah, to answer your question, that's that.
Okay, let's see.
If I had-
I think there were a few word choices and things. Blindful, blindingly. Abundant and clear. Abundantly clear would be better.
Abundantly. Okay. I think it was abundantly clear. I think I read it as that, or I might have stuttered. I did stutter a lot. I haven't practiced in a little while, so this is my first time reading out loud in like 2 weeks. But I think I did pretty good. I just kept telling myself, slow down, read it naturally, try to emphasize the right parts, and one sentence at a time. And that's how I was able to do it.
Also, phenomena is plural. A lot of people make this mistake. It's plural. The singular is phenomenon. A lot of people make that.
Oh, no, that's intentional. That's a hint. That's a hint that Moon is letting on more than what she's actually saying. She's telling the audience that we do not know what caused this phenomena, but in reality, she and the emissary know exactly what the anomalies are. Markin was able to catch a little bit of that in the previous chapter when he overheard their conversation.
Oh, then it should be these phenomena, right?
Yeah, you're right. Hold up, let me change that.
Yeah,
it should be. Yeah, I think of it as that's a little bit of a mistake on her part, a little bit of a slip up, or is it called a Freudian slip? Is that what that's called?
we just call it a slip.
Yeah, it's a slip up. The government knows more about what's going on, and that will be slowly revealed as the story goes on. Let me see. Neil had a good point here that Dunn is currently highlighting. If I had any gripes, you repeated some words, which you did correct. Personal taste, similes, I treat them like gold, so 2 is enough. Yeah, I agree. I caught it while I was reading out loud that I didn't catch while editing, and I was like, oh, I can see like some of the parts of the original draft that I accidentally left in. Because you know how sometimes when you rewrite a sentence, you go straight to the next one, and then you don't really realize how similar the 2 were, or you go to the one after that and you don't realize how similar it was to the first sentence that you edited. I don't know, my mind moves too fast where I'll like forget something that I literally just read, and that's where I might accidentally leave like the previous edits in when I put in a new edit and I accidentally make them sound exactly the same. I'm like, crap. That's where more editing comes in.
Sometimes I don't notice that until after I've printed something out and then I see it.
I know, yeah, right?
Yeah.
The dialogue was also pretty good. Each character had a distinct voice and they were talking to each other. So a good example of an exposition dump because it's masked pretty well. Yeah, thanks. One of my strongest attributes in writing is dialogue, because when I write character dialogue, I think of people, like actual people that I've interacted with in my life, and whether it be coworkers or someone at church or someone passing by here or a previous roommate. And so Seda, the way she talks is based off of how my ex-girlfriend talked. She always said silly and stupid all the time in a really high-pitched, squealing kind of way. And then she would like poke my ribs and stuff, and it was really cute. And it's hard to tell when she's being serious or not, but you quickly realize, no, that's her way of like flirting. That's her way of like showing love. And she says, "Shut up, stupid." You know, that's how she would talk. And so that's what I based that type of mannerism on. Tanic is based off of a few coworkers that I've worked with, how they talk, that kind of like just snorting and laughing to themselves and, you know, teasing and calling you names. And then the captain, I wanted to make kind of like a military professional speaker. She uses like specific words, and she says things like "Fear not, Australia is fine," and you know, she says things like "We do not know what or who may have caused the event." You know, she speaks like that, very, very formally. Yep, that's why whenever I write something, I always read my work aloud slowly, allowing each word to settle in. Yeah, I'm going to do that more. These showcases help that a lot, actually. But I need to do that before the showcases.
Yeah.
And, you know, I added a little bit of comedy relief. What did you guys think of the Universal Studios joke?
Yeah. Fair enough. What do you think, White Blob? White Blob? Done?
Well,
I'm still here. Don't worry.
takes place.
I think that it was pretty good. I don't necessarily have any thoughts about it. I'll need to. It went on a kind of long, so it's kind of like I missed a few things. I think I missed a few things. I might need to come back on it.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, basically, this is so far in the future that most people don't even know what Universal Studios is. Like, most people forgot completely. Think of it like it'll be explained later in the next chapter. No, the one after the next one. In a conversation with Tanic, that Markin is really into ancient Earth culture, and he's into it because Seda's into it, and because he loves her. He wants to know everything that she knows. So he learned about Hollywood, like old Hollywood, and so between him and Tavika, she's an alien. Aliens like the Ixani really like ancient Earth culture because it reminds them of their own world, and they like to learn about humans. So the two of them relate in a way when everyone's mostly focused on like current events or like recent history, I guess, like the 4000s, 3000s. Markin's going all the way back to like the 2000s. And he's like, "Oh yeah, Hollywood." And then when he sees the logo of the president's introduction, he laughs to himself thinking that sounds exactly like Universal Studios. And yep, I have a few things like that in the story. Just a little bit of fun moments to bring life to the characters, you know, bring personality to them.
Fair enough.
A few comedy relief moments. In the next one, Markin like teases Tanic for like crushing on the captain and making it really obvious. As she shook his hand, he blushed up there on stage, and then he tells him, "Well, you know, I like me a woman with a spine." And he says, then he tells him, "You know, she can break you in half." And then he leans and he says, "Say it again." But you know, like stuff like that, like, you know, good old banter and jokes like that. I think I do that pretty well. I don't know. I usually base it off of stuff that I've seen or like real life interactions or conversations, so I can make it as natural as possible.
Yeah. Pardon the noise over here, by the way.
What was that?
I said, pardon if I make weird noises. Pardon it. I was messing
Oh,
about
no
with
worries.
things.
I didn't hear anything. Well, yep. Damn, didn't realize it was that long. Okay, well, let's see. Let me just. Any questions about the exposition that was done here? Any like confusion? So this chapter was all about exposition on the crew members, their purpose, the main characters, who they are, why they're here, what the blackout is, and how it affects the mission. Like any questions about that, or any like, was it confusing in any way?
Pardon me, my delivery just came, so I have to get my groceries. Maybe I could use a reminder about the Exani.
Gotcha. Okay. Did I explain that? Yeah, I think I explained that in the previous chapter, chapter 1. That no, it was in chapter 1. Yeah. In my rework, I'll make sure to. I mean, it's pretty obvious by their presence that they're allies. They're allies with humanity, and they're aliens, and we're kind of past the point of like, is there other life in the universe? Yes. And as we meet the Pluto-born, there's Pluto-born humans, Pluto-born Exani. The Pluto-born Exani don't speak a lick of English, and they'll be like very cultural. And they'll be like polar opposites to Tavika, who's kind of like westernized, if you will. Like by the way she talks and speaks, she's kind of westernized. Meanwhile, she'll meet the other ones, and they'll be very like traditional or Eastern, if you will. And basically what I'm going for here is my inspiration was actually kind of Dune. The Fremen from Dune, how they are, and how like the divisions between them. You have Stilgar and those south of the border who are more fanatics and more religious. And then you have like Chani and the ones north of the border who are more like warrior types, and they kind of see through the bull crap of of their Lisan Al Gaib prophecy. It's kind of like that, but like I figured if I'm going to introduce an alien race, I want them to be interesting, nuanced, and be just like humans, where they have different types of cultures, languages. Well, they have like one language that we know of so far, Takanith, but they differ in thought and opinions, and there will be more of them that'll be introduced, and it's fun. And they're also the ones who created the Aurora Borealis lights. They can create lights. Like that was introduced in chapter 1 when Tavika was checking on Markin. Instead of putting a flashlight in front of his eyes to like check his concussion, she just created a light in her hand and then held it in front of his eyes. And that was like in the second opening scene. I figured that would be a really cool way of world building. Like, oh shoot, wow, there's an alien here. Oh wow, she can create lights. Oh wow, she can read minds. Damn. You know, like a lot being introduced quickly to like world build in a natural, organic way. It's clear that you put thought into the purpose of this exposition dump and masked it well with the situation and characterization. Yeah, I needed a reason for why they're going to Australia and why such a large amount of people are. You know, this is a horror story, so it's similar to like going to, let's say you have a horror movie about a group of filmers going to, I don't know, like Chernobyl to do a documentary. And then as they go there, like the souls of Chernobyl haunt them and like kill them one by one. You need a reason for why they're going. And the reason is for the documentary. Well, for this, the reason they're going to Australia is to figure out what happened to it and to get Vegas basically back into action. Like that's like a big hotspot of tourist travel. And it's also a paradise resort. And then as they go in, paranormal and crazy things start happening. So yeah, you know, that's when I was cooking the story in my head years ago. I needed a good reason, and then I came up with the blackout, and I said, okay, what is the blackout? It's not a literal blackout where everything blacked out. It's still in operation. There's still people living there. They just can't communicate with Earth or anywhere. They're isolated. And so we're coming here to find out why that is. Yep. We have a little bit of fun here. I'm mixing the two genres together: sci-fi and horror, or sci-fi and thriller horror.
Okay.
All right, that's it for me. I'll move on.
Sorry, I'm putting away groceries. I'll be right there. Meanwhile, carry on saying stuff with the other chaps.
Oh, okay, no worries. I guess I'll talk to like Neil here and Dunn and anyone who may be watching this in the future. Wissia, whenever you listen to this, I look forward to your thoughts as always. And same with you, Angel and Raptor and Codex and literally anyone. Yep. God, I can't wait to get into the supernatural stuff again too. Like chapter 1 opened up with that, with the face melting off and the hands outside. And so in the next one, we're gonna have a little bit of horror, just a little bit. Let's just say like a figure standing in a hallway, walking towards you slowly, kind of stuff. And you know, like the lights flickering above. I've been watching a lot of horror movies as inspiration of like the different types of horror tropes, what works, what doesn't. And I've noticed that jump scares are kind of cheesy and annoying, but like stuff like a figure blending into the shadows and then like the light flickers and then they're no longer there, stuff like that works. I noticed in a lot of like horror stuff. And you know, like the Babadook, for example, and the Babadook, how that is and how that works. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have some fun with the horror of this story.
Or Haunting of Hill House. Haunting of Hill House is an example of excellent horror.
Yeah. You also got stuff like paranormal. I mean, not poltergeist. You got poltergeist with the electric interference and how they play with that. That's really clever too. So this one, I'm tapping. My pitch for this novel is Interstellar meets H.P. Lovecraft. That's what this is. So think of that type of horror. That's what I'm going for here. And actually, while we wait for Balerion, I'll show this image on screen again. Like I did last week, this is what I visualize Estradia to look like. And in this chapter, I broke down that there's wildlife here, a lot of it. Giraffes, pandas, elephants, penguins even. So that shows you that they really put a lot of work into building over these like millennia. However long it's been since, you know, Johanna Stara created it or like founded it, and then to now in the story, probably maybe like 100 or 200 years. I haven't found a number in my head yet, but I like this image. I feel like this would describe it well. I would picture that right here, instead of mountains, it would be a massive city. And then on the outskirts of the city would be jungles, rivers, and there's going to be a scene later where Seda pulls Mark into the side and they go off trail, just the two of them, and they run through like the rivers and the forests, and then they meet a red panda, and it's really adorable. And the red panda really likes Seda. I'm really excited to write that with how cute it's going to be.
Yeah. Oops. Okay.
Image. I have another image that I like. I don't think I have it on my PC. I have my profile picture, which is pretty much like this could be just like Markin in the ship. Just your stereotypical sci-fi look.
Yeah, it kind of looks like something out of Ender's Game.
Yeah. It looks good for a profile picture, so that's why I chose it. But I feel like this image would really like this emphasizes Australia really well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Got your groceries there, sir?
Yeah. Probably gonna have to order some more on Instacart. That wasn't enough. Oh well.
Oh, hold up. I got the other one. This image I really like. Where's General? Shoot, where did it go?
Is that from
Saved
Destiny?
I saved it to my desktop, but why is it not?
Is
Why is it not
the
here?
it looks like it is on the seventh row at the very near the bottom.
Whoa, you can read all that stuff, Blight Blob?
No, just
No,
see.
not that.
Well, what are you looking for exactly?
The one that I just let's see. This will work.
The
This will work.
image? You mean the image?
This I feel like this is perfect for what Australia looks like. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine a scene like this with Markin and Seda just like admiring the views as they go to like a nearby river or lake, and then like deeper within the city, you have the Astara Resort and the nightclubs and the Oasis Riverwalk, which is like a better version of the Vegas Strip. Yeah, that's also going to be another quote from Johan in a future chapter that he's going to say, you know, I always thought the Strip was a stupid name. I want something better. How about Oasis Riverwalk? And it'll just be stuff like that. Like, he's one of the most fun characters in the story, just on how he speaks alone. He's like a really good speaker, so he does stuff like that. But yeah, this looks right. I found this on Pinterest as I was just looking up sci-fi cities, and I was like, yeah, there it is. That's how I visualize Australia to look like.
That is
And
pretty
of course,
cool.
I will
Yeah.
Of course, I will write that in the story. The more they go in, the more it gets described, and every sequence, every like set, if you will, like every set where things take place, every scene will be something different. One will take place at the river, one will take place in the nightclub, one will take place as they're ascending the tower, and all kinds of crazy stuff will happen. Crazy Lovecraftian stuff at the same time.
Ah, okay.
Interesting. Very interesting. I do like me some Lovecraft. I am only partway through the full collection of his work, though I have listened to all of the big ones, such as the Color Out of Space, Mountains of Madness, Shadows of Rainsmith, and
Have you ever done bottle scenes to get a sense of your characters? For example, having them all describe a glass of water from their POV. I have in third person. This story I'm writing is first person, only one character's perspective, because it's a horror thriller. So I figured first person would be better for that type of genre. But I've also been on these showcases before with another multi POV story that I'll write later on down the line. I want to do Australia first, where that's a third person multi POV. You know, like one of those where each chapter is a different character's perspective. So yeah, I've done that. I think I'm actually better at third person than I am first person, but I can do both. That's like me watching a lot of adventure and martial art films for my own work. Yeah, exactly. Pretty much, if you want to be good at something, you have to study the people. You have to study really close to the people who did it before you and who succeeded. So like if you want to make a good fantasy story, you study the hell out of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and his life and how he did it, you know, for example. And yeah, so that's why I've watched a lot of like, I should recap myself on Lovecraftian type of horror, how it works. Mine might not be that exactly. It's more like supernatural. It's supernatural where, you know, think of like the walls melting and like hands like reaching in through glass and then stuff like that. Or like you go to the river and you see like a woman's head pop out of the water and then like smile and then go back under, you know, that kind of like scary stuff. And then it gets crazier and crazier and crazier where you start seeing like eyes in the sky or like things like that.
Sounds a riot. Sounds
All right,
like my
ready,
week.
Valerian?
Sounds like my week. Just kidding. Okay, I think I am ready now.
lovely. All right, go ahead.
Sounds good. Go at it.
Yeah. So we remember last time. Last time we have a new emperor, Emperor Mpu'u. The old emperor died, possibly poisoned. And he is sending out emissaries to make peace with Lady Margaret. And the people he's sending out are Tiyaku, who is the sister of Barama, Margaret's cousin and friend, and the Emperor Mpu'u's younger brother, Ekwekwe the Younger, named after Ekwekwe the Elder, who is Ekwekwe the Fourth. So, and they're heading in the direction of Lady Margaret's castle, Tserthaton, but they're going to stop by at Barama's castle, which is called the Ambata. So, let's see what happens. At the Ambata, meanwhile, the situation remained much as it had been. Tiyaku's elder brother, Umara, continued to be rude to his mother, to threaten his prisoner with death and torture, occasionally actually bothering him, have him flogged a bit, but otherwise being too lazy or distracted to do much, to harass peasants and to frequent bordelli. He had already begun to collect his own berusa before his father's death, and was now adding to it constantly. Most of his people, save for a few sycophants, were at best divided as to the merits of his rule. One bright day, Umara was lolling on a mat, sniffing waka'a in the comital drawing room while waiting for one of the new saranjis, a rather short girl of smell extraction, to be led into the presence. It was fortunate, if annoying, that she hadn't arrived yet, for in the middle of this, a messenger beat the drum and announced, "Lord Ambassador Glorious Prince Ekwekwe Bewi Ekwekwe and Lady Ambassadress Splendid Saranji Tiyaku Bemwe Garawada, Great One's noble sister." "Very well, I'll meet them in the study," he said negligently. "I suppose I'd best head over there," he added, slowly getting up. "Well, go send them in," he commanded the messenger, waving his left arm in irritation. "Go." Then he himself headed for the study, only to remember on the way that he'd forgotten to cancel his appointment with the Saranji. "Sawara, take it," he cursed. As a result, he was in a baddish mood when he reached the study. Sadly, Tiyaku wasn't in the best mood either. While traveling from court to the Ambata, Tiyaku had been distressed at the ravages of the provinces of Ampari and Peje. Even the city of Cheretaba had had its share of devastation. Peasants had been revolting through all the provinces of the empire, and she and Ekwekwe had had to bring a hefty escort. Tiyaku had tried to give away money and food to the poorer peasants, but while some were grateful, many were sullen. And anyway, she didn't have enough for all of them, which made them even more sullen. As a Saranji, Tiyaku had had barely any contact with the populace and was unprepared for the thinly veiled hostility that met the party at every turn. The animals seemed grumpy too, apart from scavengers like vultures and weasels and the odd marsupial goat. They at least had plenty to eat. Ekwekwe was almost oblivious. "My good man, can you guide us to the Ambata?" Sullen stare. "I say, what's bothering you, what?" "Don't know, master." "Where's the Ambata, my friend?" "Don't know, master." "I say, what's bothering these peasants, what?" Ekwekwe the Younger scratched his head. "Their attitude is ghastly." "Maybe their lords are cruel?" Tiyaku shook her head helplessly. "I don't know. The countryside is ravaged, but it seems to me they did a lot of the ravaging themselves. Maybe it was done by bandits. My gracious parents were always kind to their people. But they might be harsher further east." Equekwe nodded in a negligent manner. Kind of a waste out here anyway. We shan't find any decent wine or women out here, we may be sure of that. No wonder the peasants are grouchy, what? Tiaku sighed and threw back her head in polite assent. Despite the peasants' attitude, the party had eventually arrived at the Ambata's east gate and sent Umara a messenger to announce them in the style described above. They had to wait a good while at the guardhouse, and Tiaku's mood was ever the worse the longer she waited. Umara took his sweet time in responding, but eventually an escort arrived and led them up to the study. The study had been redecorated in accordance with the new count's lack of taste. The paneled bas-reliefs of Sacred Nine and the Roots of Knowledge had been covered up with pornographic tapestries, not quite so disgusting as the ones Equekwe IV had favored, but bad enough. And the stone figurines of Sacred Nine blessing the ancestor Marawere. The stone figurines of Sacred Nine blessing the ancestor Marawere remained, but had been put in brack. Wineskins, waka'a containers, and waka'a particles covered the floor. Tiaku entered the study with the air of a ruler inspecting a remote and fairly insignificant province. She was clad from head to foot in the red garment worn by imperial Sarangis whenever they left the Barusa, and carried in her right hand a red parasol in the shape of the imperial acacia blossom and decorated with the punaga, or coat of arms, of the counts of the Ambata. Equekwe the Younger was also in red and wore a golden ruby-studded belt, from which hung a reddish-gold ceremonial sword whose hilt had been got up to look like the usual imperial goat. His staff of embassy was all of gold, topped by a marsupial goat's head of ruby. Sadly, all this finery only served to make him look even more ridiculous than usual, and was the worse for wear in any case. "Greetings, noble brother," said Tiaku. "We had expected to be admitted sooner. We represent Exalted Box, and speak with exalted voice." Equekwe did his best to look important, glanced around the study in an unimpressed kind of way, and gestured lazily to Tiaku that she could go on doing the talking. "I was detained by pressing business," slurred her noble brother, not very convincingly. He made a half-hearted effort not to slouch, failed, and nodded his indifference. "So I see," said Tiaku, with a meaningful look at the rubbish on the floor. "Your redecoration of the study does you all the credit that one would expect. I should think you'd be used to it from the Barusa. However things may be in the provinces, at court the study is the study, and the Barusa the Barusa." "How profound," said Umara, waving his left hand and almost knocking over his wine glass. "That's not how I remember the court. The entire palace was one big Barusa. It was one of those not very bright people whose sallies of wit make them seem even stupider than they are." "Was," retorted Tiaku. "Things have changed." She went on to explain that Equekwe IV had, quote, "abandoned us for the light of heaven," end quote, and had been replaced by Mpu'u, who was making a fresh start after the decadence of the preceding reign. Everyone writhed in not very convincing mourning for Equekwe IV and prostrated themselves in honor of the new ruler. Umara somehow managing to do so without falling over. The requisite rituals having been carried out, Tiaku got down to business. "And now we have commands for you, noble brother, which you must obey." She raised her parasol in an authoritative gesture. But who gave you the authority, noble sister, said Umara. Exalted. It seems that grief has addled your noble wits. Did you not see my parasol? Did you not see glorious ambassador's staff? Tiaku pointed to Ekwekwe's staff. You are not showing Glorious much respect. Umara had nothing to say to all that, so he ignored it and turned to Ekwekwe, the younger. Greetings, Glorious, he said almost politely. He began to prostrate himself in accordance with Sandaranian court etiquette when Ekwekwe stopped him. Fortunately, for Count Umara was still unsteady on his feet. Why did these people have to turn up when he was both high on Waka'a and expecting a Saranji? Evening, what's his name? I mean Umara. I mean Great One. Ekwekwe waved a hand negligently. Oh, it's kind of repetitious. Oh well. Oh no, no need to stand on ceremony. Official business, you know, from court. Ekwekwe tried to make his baritone sound less lazy, failed miserably, and gave it up as a bad job. Frightful bother having to go out all this way. Is there a decent border? With your permission, the chit-chat can wait, Glorious. Tiaku lowered her head to mitigate any possible breach of etiquette. Shall we show the Count our documents? Ekwekwe threw back his head in sloppy assent, and Tiaku handed Umara the papers sent by Mpu'u. The papers were in a gilt box with an enormous crimson MP for Mpu'u. MP is a separate letter of the alphabet in Sandaranian, and a U for Uchagara, Emperor. And it was marked with the crimson imperial seal, which it was death to forge. We submit to Exalted will, said Umara. Maybe Exalted will make me minister, he thought. Exalted wills that Great One O'Ea Bemwembawa, former governor of Peje, be freed and returned to court for a promotion, explained Tiaku. Oh, I forgot he was here, said Umara. Is that true, Glorious Ambassador? Umara asked Ekwekwe. O'Ea to be freed? Ekwekwe shrugged or nodded, the Sandaranian equivalent. Must be, he muttered. Well, a lot to do it here, yes? Exalted must be obeyed forthwith, noble brother, said Tiaku. All right, I'm obeying, splendid Sarangi. I'm past, said Dreshai Hoo-ha, said the Count. Keep your splendid Sarangi hair on. Ho, slaves, take my guest to the east guest apartments. And you, guards, free O'Ea and bring him here, too. I'd bully him because I'm in a bad mood, but let's just get it over with. Noble sister, don't bother snooping. None of my important papers is in there. I'm not stupid. I am pleased to hear it, said Tiaku with a curtsy, and somehow managing to keep her voice only moderately sarcastic. So Count Umara had his guards escort O'Ea from the prison to the guest apartments where Tiaku and Ekwekwe the Younger were waiting. The rooms had once been fairly luxuriously appointed, with silk hammocks and a baronwood table, and tapestries showing the deeds of various comital ancestors. The current count had moved most of that stuff to his own quarters, but had kept the tapestries because they weren't to his taste. But he had left the tapestries because they weren't to his taste. Upon being admitted, O'Ea bowed to Tiaku, looking both relieved and nervous, and prostrated himself before distracted Ekwekwe. Let's see. Glorious I, I'm frightfully sorry about the bother, being driven from court and imprisoned and all that, Great One. O'Ea Bemwe Mbawa, was it? Said the latter, that is Ekwekwe. Please get up. Tiaku whispered something in his ear, and he continued, We're sent here by old Exalted Mpu'u II, the new emperor, to free you from prison and summon you to court and exalted favor in that. Oh, it's not your glorious fault, said O'Ea. Exalted graces this lowly servant abundantly. It's never easy being a high official. He hoped they'd let him eat soon and then let him go, preferably in a carriage or litter. He was tired and sore. Be pleased to rest, great one, interposed Tiaku with a curtsy. A servant escorted Oea into a bedchamber for some much-needed repose. While Oea was resting, Umara and Tiaku traded news, in a manner of speaking, and Ikwekwe the younger dozed off. Well, well, my noble brother, now that we've concluded that business, how goes it with our gracious mother and our noble brother? How should I know? Said Umara with a dismissive left-hand gesture. Our gracious mother sits by her gracious self in her gracious quarters, whilst her noble brother ran off to join a noble bunch of not-so-noble rebels. Tiaku arched both eyebrows. I see you care as much for them as you did for our father. Angara bless his memory. How are you bearing your grief? Oh, I manage. I'm building myself a barusa, and you should know all about that. I do, said Tiaku darkly. And enjoying the wine and waka'a. Umara smirked and poured himself some beach wine. I've been spending the tribute our peasants send us. Oh yes, your munificence to Bordelian taverns knows no bounds. Do you give as generously to the poor? Since when do you care about them? Said Umara, half sarcastic, half genuinely puzzled. Kara, help us. Life at court has made me wiser, said Tiaku. Pardon me. Wisdom is a bore, yawned Umara, taking a sip of beach wine. Well, more like a gulp. What matters isn't wisdom, but firstly power, and secondly having fun with said power. Tiaku waved her left hand contemptuously in her elder brother's general direction. Must I go? Oh, not in the least. You might enjoy meeting my Saranjis. I'll be sending them for them directly. The Count chuckled and showed Tiaku the door, quite forgetting to provide her an escort. I wouldn't dream of intruding. I must pay my respects to our mother. Tiaku gathered her crimson raiment, curtsied perfunctorily, and left. Umana laughed sarcastically and got ready for some entertainment. Did someone say Saranjis? Said Ikwekwe, waking up as if on cue. And that's that section done. Yeah, the next section can wait till next time.
Nice.
Are we still? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, are we still on the politics of the changing of emperors?
Yeah, but we're also. Am I echoing? No.
Ever so slightly, but it's not a big problem. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we're still, because these people hadn't heard about that yet. So that's, and she has to go. They have to go, and they have to put a stop to the siege of Margaret's Castle, Tserthaton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and those.
Sorry, it was a bit hard to keep track. I'm having a hard time remembering who all these names are. Some are obvious, but others I'm like, oh, I don't remember who this is. I don't remember who that is. The names are interesting. They're very exotic, but some of them seem a little too exotic to where you could easily mistake it for another exotic name, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's probably easier if you're reading as opposed to hearing it read. Not to mention that
Yeah.
these are characters who have appeared before, but that might have been months or years ago that I read those bits. And you might not even have been here at the time. So you might not have even heard those chapters.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
You have been presenting this one for a while now, huh?
Yeah. Yep. Since pretty close to. Have I been presenting this for 4 years now? Possibly.
I think yes. It has been a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's right. Shoot, dude, I moved here to Oregon in 2021, and it's now 2024. And I remember you were presenting this story before I moved, so that's how I know. It's been a while.
To be fair, there have been gaps too, and occasionally I've read from other things because I was reading. Sometimes I take a break and read from a parody.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
I remember one you were just going like, dude, no.
Oh, okay. Yes, there was the ones where the teenaged fanfic, postmodern ones.
Yeah, or like the weird erotic geology stuff.
Well, it was the 69th one, so I guess that was the time to do that one.
Indeed.
Where the guy gets really turned on by like Middle Earth's geological features are so hot, man. Like there's river valleys and stuff. Like, yeah.
You know, Don, I was thinking about this while Balerion was presenting. So, believe me, this is relevant for both of us. Balerion's scenes are kind of like mine. I like to describe. I like to write like movie scenes rather than thinking in the mindset of chapters. And for each chapter, for me, it feels like it's an entire scene. So you know how you're watching something like a war movie or a horror movie or something where one scene is short. Let's say like, I don't know, like The Room, for example, where he just goes in that flower shop and it just cuts away and that's done. That's one scene. And then you see something like Terminator 2, or like a James Cameron movie where he'll have long, organic, drawn out, really good action sequence scenes, and some of them going on for hours, like what we've seen in Avatar, both of the Avatar movies, Terminator, I believe Alien. What I'm saying is, I read for 40 minutes and didn't even realize it. How do I do this with these showcases while having scenes like that one? My next chapter is going to be much shorter, or hopefully, but because it's just like a hallway scene of like, you know, soldiers bullying the main character, and then the main character seeing a hallucination. So it's very, very simple, very quick. But I'm thinking like for something like that, for an initiation ceremony, where I read for 40 freaking minutes. I don't even know how many pages this was. What's a good place to like stop for that? Because I noticed, Balerion, you struggle with the same thing. Your scenes are kind of, or they organically keep going. It's a lot happening and it keeps going, but you stop yourself sometimes where you read only a third of your chapter or half, or sometimes a fourth, I think, for each showcase. Because you've mentioned it, You've mentioned that this is the next part of chapter, whatever it may be. And then the next showcase, you're like, and then here's the next segment of that same chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, damn, these were supposed to flow into one another.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to do that without taking up so much time, because I don't want to take up 40 minutes of time every showcase.
Yeah,
I also want the scenes to be organic.
Yeah, my chapters my chapters have sections depending on like going by the scene, and I have them set off with bold, like the first word of each section in bolds. Sometimes a section will be so long that I'll have to find a stopping place in the middle of a section. Other times they'll be a lot shorter. Sometimes some of the sections are a little too short. I may have to build up some of them.
Well done. Oh, sorry. Let me ask really quick. Judging from the type of story I'm telling, what would be a good solution to this for these showcases? Since my scenes some are very long, and for good reason, because like the one I just read, where there's a lot happening, but it's all like vital stuff, and it's flowing really well, but it just goes on for so long in an auditorial format. What's a good solution for that for these showcases? What should I do?
Find a stopping place that looks good to you.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe I'll put on a timer, and then when the timer goes off, I'll keep reading until there's a nice natural stopping place.
Yeah. Sorry I can't give you more helpful advice than that, but it depends on what's going on in the chapter. You find a place depending on what's going on in the chapter. Maybe I can stop here. He's about to go on stage. Maybe I'll stop here. Maybe I'll stop right after he goes on stage or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Yeah, maybe I should have stopped after the death glares from the audience, and then no, but then that flows well into like his love interest comforting him. So maybe that would have been a good place to stop. I don't know. It's just it's tricky. It's tricky.
It is tricky. It is tricky. It turned out all right because I was eating anyway, so I wouldn't have been able to present anyway. So we would have had to move on to Blight Blob.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping that in mind. As I'm writing the rest of the story, I'm realizing my scenes or chapters are too long. So I'm realizing, okay, maybe I should split up scenes into multiple. And like what I was going to go to next was just straight into going down to the planet, but I'm realizing I think I'm going to need 3 chapters for that. One in the hallway scene, one in the elevator shaft where he's talking with Tannic, an entire chapter for that, and not very long at all, and then another for when they arrive in it. So I'm thinking, okay, the original vision, I guess, was kind of like episodes, but when you watch like a TV show or something where you have episodes, it's multiple scenes, like a lot. Even in a half-hour TV show, it's multiple scenes, let alone like an hour-long episode of a TV show. So I'm thinking, okay, each scene, each transition into one thing to another, end it, and next one. Because that's what I'm seeing in this novel I'm reading. The scenes are very short, but I'm realizing I think that was intentional to make the chapters shorter so it wouldn't drag on and on and on. I gotta figure out how to do that. I mean, with this one, I think it's a good exception. It's an initiation ceremony. It shouldn't really be interrupted. But from there on, though, yeah, okay. Look, even during like the horror sequences, I think I'll cut it, cliffhanger, and then the next chapter where it continues right where you left off.
So, any more reactions to my chapter?
One thing that I have a little bit of a struggle with is I'm having trouble visualizing the people. I know that they have dark skin because you said that to me. I don't know if I have a good picture of what they're wearing or what some of their mannerisms are. Physical mannerisms.
That's odd. I described what some of them were wearing.
Maybe I missed it. I could have missed that. I do like your dialogue quite a bit. I think that the dialogue shows a lot of characterization. Some of them are a little bit similar to each other, but I don't know if I necessarily have a good sense of what the individual people look like. I don't necessarily have any like big identifiable physical traits that I could attach to each character to kind of give a good impression to get a mental image in my head. And maybe that's a flaw on my part. Maybe I've just missed it, but that's just something that I might like a little bit more of.
One thing you could try, Balerion, is something I love doing, but I do it too much where I over describe it. Body language descriptions. Let's say you have the character is the new emperor. Let's say his body language is waving his hands dismissively and scoffing a lot. You could describe teeth gritting and like giving smug expressions. I'm not saying that's how the character is, but this is an example. And then let's say you have like a royal guard to that character. Once again, another example, not actual characters you've written. I'm just thinking of your type of setting and what I would do in that setting. And so you could have like a royal guard who holds a spear and they hold it really close and like they don't react much at all. They just look stone cold. A character asks them a question, they reply, and their face barely even moves. It's just the mouth moving. You could describe those body languages. I did that today. The captain puts her hands behind her back. She stomps her feet and walks forward. And then I introduced the soldier at the end, the colonel. And he's like a massive tank, and he's just seemingly emotionless, where he walks up there and just says nothing and looks forward coldly. Pretty much like that. You could try that, and that could be a good solution for what Dunn just mentioned.
Yeah, there's some of that, but I think there's more of it in later chapters, and this is an earlier chapter. I think there's more of that in later chapters, but yeah, that's that sort of thing. And then also I get into the fact that they have different gestures to ours.
Oh
Too.
yeah, then you could explore that. Yeah, I was telling Raptor about this when he was writing his story about the apes and the planet of raptors. That since you're writing animals, talking animals, give them animalistic body language habits. Like the apes have them like, you know, when they get frustrated, like pound their knuckles on the ground. Stuff like that, or like scratch their chins a lot and like emphasize it, you know, have fun with it basically. Yeah, that's a good point. That makes it even more exciting. If they have unique types of mannerisms that aren't natural or normal for us, you
And
could write into that and emphasize it in between the dialogues, and
it doesn't
it would be really cool to see.
it doesn't have to be a big thing. One of the things that I think of when I think of the Wheel of Time books is that each of the characters has a very defining characteristic about them that makes it easy to picture. For instance, uh, Rand is pale and has red hair and gray eyes, something that not a whole lot of other people have. Nynaeve has a very waist long black brown braid that she will hug when she gets irritated.
Mm. You're breaking up a
Yeah,
bit, but I do get your point.
Yeah.
yeah, I might be projecting, I guess. That's a me thing. That might be my style, emphasizing body language. I
Well,
see a golden opportunity there. If you have interesting mannerisms that aren't normal for us, I would say lean into that. That's interesting. That's engaging.
People give assent by throwing their heads back, for example. They don't
yeah.
nod. If you nod, it's more like a shrug.
Yeah. Or like I think adding little bits of um, physical action periodically with um, after a dialogue tag or in place of a dialogue tag.
I'm noticing in this one there's a lot of without much description in the middle of it between what people are saying in this particular bit. I noticed that while I was reading it. I haven't actually read this bit for a while because I'm trying to write the epilogue, which is and this is
A
about
little ways away.
this is like the halfway point. So I'm way behind where I actually am in writing in these bits.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. So,
So
but yeah, I did notice that while I was reading that there's a lot of da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, said Chiaku. Da-da-da-da-da.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that per se. You know, like sometimes if there's nothing happening, if it's just two people talking, and sometimes the dialogue itself describes what's happening. And I've seen that in writing in novels. I've seen it. Like let's say Fahrenheit 451 when Montag and his I forgot the captain. I think like the captain of the fire department. He's in his home, sitting at his table, talking to him about books. There's like no tags or no descriptions. It's just him talking, and you can see the scene. It's a guy establishing his authority over his inferior, I guess. I forgot the exact word. You know, like the captain of the fire station is like pretty much putting himself above Montag by sitting in his own table, his own chair, and talking down to him like that. And the dialogue itself pretty much describes what's happening. And so, you know, like that's perfectly fine. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fine up to a point. It's a happy medium, but yeah, you don't always have to have a description with after dialogue.
Oh, definitely not. I think it's just something that kind of adds a little bit of flavor and just draws the reader's attention to something. Like I would use Robert Jordan as a really good example where each of the conversations that he wrote out, he interposes a combination of actions and internal monologue throughout the conversation.
Yeah. Whereas Jamal does a lot of this. I saw the count at Janina. You saw the count at Janina? Yes. At Janina? Yes. Jip, 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 jip.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of that jip, 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 jip. You know what I mean by that, right? Where you got dialogue, another line of dialogue, another line of dialogue, another line of dialogue, another line of dialogue.
Script-esque.
Yeah, it's very, and he I think he must have been paid by the line, because there's bits where the people are repeating the exact same, where the question's repeating the exact same thing, and then the chap says yes. So it's like, I suspect he may have been paid by the line, on some of this, because he adds extra lines where he doesn't need to.
Mm.
It works, mind you, but it is noticeable.
I would agree. Yeah, it's just that it's noticeable, not necessarily that it's bad.
Yeah, it's a very noticeable. It's his style, and he tends to short paragraphs too.
Yeah, it's mainly like I'm used to Sanderson and Jordan, who have fairly similar styles in terms of how they write stuff. Though Sanderson doesn't have as extensive a descriptive vocabulary as Jordan does, or at the very least does not utilize as it as much.
Yeah, I get a little impatient during the expository bits in Sanderson, waiting for the dialogue bits, but maybe that's just me in general.
I think it depends. I think it kind of depends. Like I often see the often he does a good job of making exposition somewhat in the character that he's writing, which makes it a lot more interesting than how most novel writers that just do exposition do stuff. Like David Eddings kind of has a little bit of a problem with this. Same with Orson Scott Card, from my recollection of Ender's Game.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a balance.
Mm.
It's a tricky balance. Writing is hard.
Indeed, writing is very hard.
I think we should just give up on it.
Oh, no.
No, it's too much fun. No, it's too much fun.
No, it sucks. No more writing for me.
Well, I know for me, I'm definitely going to prioritize always the natural organic flow of whatever scene I'm writing. As for the presentations, if I have to stop myself in the middle of a scene, so be it.
Yeah, that's a reasonable approach. Yes.
Yeah, you can totally.
Basically, I think about like Terminator 2, or I know that you guys are probably going to clown on me, but Avatar. I think about Avatar, and I like Avatar not for the reasons. I like it for its spectacle and action sequences. James Cameron is a mastermind at action sequences, and so instead of using those, I'll use Terminator. In Terminator and Terminator 2, like the action sequences are long, but they're so good because they flow into one another. You go from one set to another set to another set to another set with the Terminators, and it works, and it works really well. And it's a big inspiration for me when I'm writing, when I'm writing my scenes, or if it's something like an initiation ceremony, or let's say an action scene, mine are probably going to be very long because it's not just going to be in one spot. It's going to be like that, where, let's say one character or one party is running for their lives while the other is hunting them down. And so I guess for the presentations, what I'll do is I'll just stop. I'll put on a timer, and when the timer runs out, 15 minutes, I'll stop. I'll be like, all right, see you next week.
I wouldn't say that I hate Avatar. I just view it as an empty, purely functional product. I just
Which one?
Avatar. I don't think it's I don't think
The
it's
thing that
insulting to my intelligence. I like something like TLJ or Transformers.
Yeah, you know what I realize what it is with Avatar is it's not about the story. Like the whole
Mhm.
point to James Cameron's Avatar movies is to test the boundaries of CGI. That's the entire point. Like when I was watching them, I realized, you know what this is? This isn't a story driven movie like Killers of the Flower Moon or a Quentin Tarantino movie. This is purely for the art of 3D and making like
Mhm.
the best 3D product that he possibly can. And that's the point. That's the entire point of those. It's all about the world itself,
Mhm.
Pandora, I guess, and how to make it look more beautiful. That's his
Yeah.
goal when he makes those. And
Yeah.
he doesn't care about the inner workings or like the inner conflicts and stuff. He just wants a beautiful world. And I realize, okay, I see what's going on here. It's kind of
Mhm.
like when you watch a Godzilla movie. The entire point to a Godzilla movie is either Godzilla himself or Godzilla fighting another kaiju. That's the point. You know, that's the entire point.
Yeah,
And then you see
it's a
like
tech demo. Yeah, it's a tech
what?
demo. It's a tech
Yeah.
it's a tech demo, so yeah,
Yes,
it's
exactly.
totally fine.
Yeah. But then you see something like Godzilla Minus One, where it's actually a war movie. That's a movie about war. And Godzilla is just an allegory for nuclear bombs and war, like in the original Godzilla, Gojira. And so that's why that one works so well. It's not
Mhm.
really a kaiju movie. I thought about this. Like I thought, you know, Godzilla Minus One isn't. It's not a kaiju movie. It's actually a war movie with the kaiju in it. And I was like, damn, that's why it works so well.
Mhm.
That's why it's better than the other ones. Meanwhile, you got like Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla and Kong, and that's literally just kaiju movie. But
Totally,
yeah, I'm gonna do that.
yeah, totally
I'm in
get.
half for
I totally get you. Yeah, yeah. Whatever the flow in the writing is, it's just like just make sure that you like just cut it at the appropriate point, just so that we don't. Since we can only, I think we can only really retain so much of a continuous audio stream into
yeah,
the feedback.
yeah. I guess I'll be on more showcases then. My story's probably only going to be like 25 chapters long. It's not too dense, but yeah, I guess I'll be on around 40 or so.
Oh, don't worry.
Well,
I'm looking at making a 7-book series from a book
now
from a
that's
story that.
ambitious.
Oh, I thought it was only going to be 3, and it's
Nice.
rapidly expanding because I thought that it would just be, oh, this will just be like a few, and it's like, oh, no, this is actually really, really, really long. Like I can draw out a lot of material from this without very much effort.
It'll be like
Yeah.
Gurm. It'll just start as 3, then it'll turn to 7. Then next thing you know, ooh,
But don't worry, I will actually finish this.
oh wow, you really are ambitious.
That's so interesting to me. The different types of personalities, different minds. Neil here wrote my series is a 9-book series, 3 trilogies. Wissia also told me that he's plotting for 3 or 4. And I'm over here going, damn, I'm a one-off kind of person. Like what I write, as Tarek mentioned that one time, is extremely dense. There's a lot happening all at once in my stuff, but it's like one-off. It's just I guess I'm kind of more like a Jordan Peele type of creator rather than I guess I don't know, like what's another movie example that's series? Like a Terminator or like an Alien, you know, the Alien movies, like a franchise type of creator. You know, like Jordan Peele comes out with Get Out, that's a one-off, and then he comes out with Us and similar but another one-off, and then he made Nope, same thing, and I guess I'm kind of more like that.
Yeah,
Those
when I
those
finished,
movies are dense. There's a lot happening in those at this all at once. Those are extremely dense. So I think, dang, I guess I'm that kind of person.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
when I finished this novel, when I finally actually finish this novel, I'll probably go on and write something else.
Well,
What are you thinking?
I have an idea about a different country in my world, and where they have these they're trying to. It's called Cambria, and they're trying to like centralize and make everyone learn to speak the same language, like become like it's the whole movement at that time. Like everyone in Britain should speak English, everyone in France should speak French, and so forth. The whole nation building thing, um, and and so they take people from these various groups and put them in boarding schools, and they force them to learn the language. Um, and I was going to have someone who goes to one of these schools and they're miserable, but then the teacher plays the piano and they fall in love with the music. Maybe I might never actually write this thing, but it's just an idea.
Interesting.
yeah, so the reason why I say that this is going to be multiple books is because I took a single, like 3-4 day period in one of these books, and it is almost 30,000 words.
Woo.
So that's why I say this is multiple books, and I have material for covering roughly about 5 years. 5 years for and then an additional 1 to 2 years of material. So that's that. Since I don't like writing 100,000, like 200,000 word books. I like the longest I've ever gone, I think, is around 80K. So, yeah, I think that just by virtue of this being relatively long, it's gonna take up a lot. This is gonna take a lot of room. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, we've been going for almost a couple hours.
You want to read?
Yeah, mine's gonna be relatively short. It's only like 2 pages.
I could only imagine. I don't know why I'm so long-winded. I'm not trying to be. I swear to God.
It's fine. It's just that this particular book has shifts. Every chapter is a different POV. And so some of them are like I'll have some books where I said, okay, minimum 10 pages. Admittedly, I didn't realize that since these are single spaced, that the 10 pages would become 20 pages at points for other stuff.
What's the have you that reminds me, that style, I really like that. I don't see it very often. Have you read Peter and the Starcatchers at all?
I have, yes. I quite enjoy the first book. I haven't read the other two, but I quite like it.
I love those. The trilogy is good. Shadow Thieves is the second. Secret of Rundun is the third. They all have that style of multi POV, and it's really exciting towards the end, especially because you can have one page of one POV for that chapter, and then it goes straight back to another, and then leaves you on a cliffhanger, and it just rapidly goes back and forth or not back and forth, like to multiple people, leaving you on your toes, like really excited for what's happening when it's all technically one scene. That's fun stuff. I gotta make something like that. I just had this type of stories and that type of narrative, so it wouldn't work here. But yeah, I like that style. That's a really good style.
Okay.
Alrighty. Ready when you are.
All right. So This is chapter 17. At this point, we're in the deep breath before the plunge, where the battle is about to start and the sides are slowly coalescing, where the defenders are getting their fortress ready and are sending out raids of animals, while a fast-moving cavalry release force is trying to get to the fortress to ensure that it doesn't fall to the Shi. That's the main thing. And we're going to be picking up with the relief cavalry force. Camul kept the army moving as much as possible. It was a massive advantage that the whole army was forced, and Camul's talisman granted all of his troops and their mounts additional strength and endurance. Farah rode next to him on her slightly smaller black stallion, Wraith. Despite their speed, her posture was nervous, but she didn't voice her concerns. "We'll get there before the enemy can take the fortress," Camul promised, reaching over and putting his hand on her shoulder. "I know we will, but it's just..." Farah chewed her lip. "My brother has never believed in half measures. If the enemy has come after him, that means that they've come out in force." "How many do you think?" Camul asked automatically. "We don't know what their numbers are." Sarah shook her head. "The problem is they keep breeding like cockroaches under a rock in their underground cities or in their damn forests." "I see." Camul stroked the hilt of his sword. "We'll redouble our pace tomorrow, but we'll have to rest well tonight." "Agreed." Farah patted her horse. "So, what is a good way of entering the Darkmouth?" he asked. "If the enemy is against the wall, then we'll have to charge through them to get to the defenders." "There is a way. There's a small passage in the side of the mountain that we can use to get into the castle. It's double file only, which will keep the enemy from going through, but it's blocked by a thick, huge door that only opens for one of the Azrith. It's for someone from the inside." "An Azrith locked door," Camul tilted his head. "What an excellent idea." "Well, that is something." Farah nodded. "All we need to do is enter through the Umbriel and pass through the door so we can open it for our army." Sighing, she tapped the pommel of her sword. "So, how do we ensure that the enemy doesn't turn and smash into our army?" "My light cavalry can harry and distract the enemy into the cover of night or a deep fog." Camul tapped on the pommel of his own sword, and stroked Malfurion's neck. "And what then?" Farah asked. "Very simply, I will keep harassing them as viciously as possible while small groups enter the fortress. Then, once all of them have gone in, some of my men can retreat and return to the king to let them know what happened, while the rest strip the countryside and keep attacking to force them to keep attacking the fortress." Camul shrugged. "I'll stay behind and help defend the fortress." "It's going to be interesting to see how you and my brother react." Farah tilted her head and tapped the cantle of her saddle. What's he like?" Camul asked. Farah thought for a moment, then grimaced. "Cuirafier is an extremely passionate person," she explained. "He's not one to simply conform and do what other people want him to do. Father was trying to get him to go into the military. He responded by going into the sorcerers and learning magic. The only thing he's ever really been passionate about is protecting Olentius and the woman he wanted to marry. So leadership wasn't something he's ever been interested in." Well, full open and closed with his gauntleted fingers, using the motion to keep himself focused. "And now that he's lost Olympius, he only has the woman. Unless she was on Olympius." "I think she was." Farah's face turned down. He's lost more than any of us. So much of his identity was wrapped up in serving Olympius, but now that it's gone, he has nothing except revenge on those who took what he held dear from him. And that's what's caused him to overextend. Kamal nodded slowly. So much of this situation was now making sense to him. He's not thinking like a leader. He's just thinking about how to hurt the enemy and not caring about the costs. Farah frowned, but didn't protest. Kamal kept on closing and opening his fingers, then turned his eyes toward the west. Well, my hope is that we'll be able to work together. Based on his personality, do you think I'll have to butt heads with him? So long as you enable him to do what he feels is necessary. Farah flicked the pommel. Flicked the air with her finger. If you can make it that he can massacre She without mercy, he'll go along with it. She pursed lipped. One issue also is that he suffers from melancholy. But he has found a way to channel that into rage. Sometimes, Farah shrugged. Often he went off on his own and brooded for days. Couldn't find him even before he got his amulet. So who's the older one out of the two of you? Will asked, surprising how much engagement he was getting out of figuring out this family dynamic. He's older, but he's never wanted any responsibilities. Farah held up her hand as if examining her nails. He's always wanted to go his own way, and nothing Father did could convince him. Is he able to follow orders when properly motivated? Kamal asked, nudging Malfurion forward. Emphasis on properly motivated. Farah started tapping her fingertips against her palm. He's willing to go along with anything that will kill the She, but if he disagrees with the strategy, he'll buck authority like a wild ass. Standard under-officer behavior. Kamal closed his fist. We'll have to see what happens. And that's the end.
Very quick, very short. Just a casual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing myself, I would have just wrote that and then kept going in the chapter. So I see what you're doing there. Ending it at a good natural point. That makes sense.
Yeah, since the next one's going to be a little bit longer, it's about 3 pages. It's about 2.5, half single spaced. So
different POV or same POV?
Different POV.
Different. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, the next several pages are going to be the siege of this of this castle, and it's going to be from multiple different POVs and different chapters. So I'll kind of leave it at that for a little bit and just I'll do probably about 2 sections of the battle since it's about 3.5 pages total. So it's not that big of a time sink, I'd say.
Cool.
Did you drop something, Valerian?
Oh, sorry. I was just came back from putting laundry in the dryer. Sorry about that.
You're fine. I was just curious. I just heard a thumb. All right. Any other feedback before? It was very short, so I don't expect very much.
Oh, did I miss the whole thing? Sorry.
You're fine. It's okay. Yeah, it was only like 2 pages. It was very short.
Oh, there was it. Did it have Mithrical in it?
Sorry.
Did it have
done.
Mithrical?
I did not. She's currently She's currently disappeared from the narrative, though a good friend of hers will be showing up a little bit later.
Are we still doing the she versus who are those other people? What were those other people called?
The Azrith, yes,
Right.
that's still the case. Yes.
Okay. Good. Good. What about Kamul? Does he still exist, or is that like ages ago? Was that a different story? I'm sorry.
No, this is still Kamul. Yeah, Kamul's still around. The chapter was actually about Kamul and his tentative girlfriend, Farah.
Oh, okay. This is a romantic moment in the story.
Yeah, they were talking about, he was trying to get a feel for what kind of person her brother, Kurfir, is.
Okay, Kurfir. He's the one who's trying to get revenge.
Yes, because he's now overextended quite a bit and caused a major problem for them. Because
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, since the main thing about this situation is that Kurfir bit off way more than he could chew. And now they're having to try and help him get out of a really bad mess that he's in.
Yeah, because when you try to get revenge, sometimes you can get carried away, and the next thing you know,
Yeah, since he's lost his home and the woman he loves, and he's lost the woman he loves not in a final she died way. It's more her brain and body are gone, since she's been transformed into one of these strange creatures. And she's lost all of her memory, and there's no way of getting it back. And so
is she under control of Mithrakol now?
The Fomori are not necessarily mind controlled by Mithrakol, no. They've had their minds reconstituted and repaired by Kamul, but they aren't automatons. They're just more bestial now.
Oh, okay.
And you'll see how bestial they are later on.
Like what were those people? What were those creatures called in Mistborn?
Kolos?
Yes.
Not to that level. They are at least cogent and can formulate sentences. It's more just that certain dietary inhibitions no longer are in place.
Oh. Yeah,
Moral dietary.
Let's eat let's eat some people.
Glad you get my meaning.
That's reasonable to me.
Yeah. There's certain people I would fry up and eat. Movie Bob would probably taste good considering the amount of fats he's intaken into himself.
No, might be too much fat. Like a hamburger or something. Might be a bit too much.
Let us fry up Bob Iger, but eat nothing because it will be tainted meat.
Yeah,
just to get him out.
Same with Victor Zaslav of Warner Discovery, who seems to be driving everything that he does, and seems to be running this whole thing like his personal piggy bank, and is not even thinking about it like a company. Freaking moron.
While we're at it, let's go for the CEO of BlackRock for being single-handedly responsible for all the horrible media and the direction we see everything going in.
Yeah. Frickin'
Mr. I will
Blackhawk can go
force
screw
we will
itself.
force behaviors on people. Literally a quote. Yeah, no. How about we force you onto this grill?
Yeah.
Yep,
Feed
Zaslav.
you to the
Yeah, Zaslav. It's easy to forget that Warner Brothers actually was originally Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig and all that.
Oh my goodness, I forgot. Yeah, I grew up watching Boomerang and Boomerang replaying back to back the what's it called? The 80s cartoons. 90s? Was Looney Tunes 80s or 90s?
Looney Tunes actually goes back to all the way back to the 40s originally.
Oh,
It's
yeah, that
really,
matches.
really old. It's been around a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, my
Is Boomerang
parents
still
watched,
around?
my parents watched them. Are
I
they still
think-
around? I don't know. Are they?
I think not as of in the same permutation, but they've gone through multiple permutations and have pretty much been around consistently since their inception.
Okay.
Since they
Yeah,
don't have
as a kid.
since they
Oh,
don't
sorry.
have a plot, they can pretty much just go off of like skit adventure style storytelling for the rest of time.
Yeah, when I was growing up, during a certain period of my life, for about 2 years or so, I was at a babysitter's. This one particular babysitter's, because my mom was a single mother who was working, and so I would just watch like Boomerang all the time for some reason, and it was constantly replaying those cartoons: the Bugs Bunny, Coyote and Roadrunner. What's that future one? It's not Futurama. It's something. There was Flintstones as well.
The
So dang,
Jetsons?
Valerian.
The
Yeah, yeah,
Jetsons?
yeah. Yeah, Valerian, you brought back those memories. I forgot about those. Yeah, that's right. That's how Warner Brothers started. And then I also grew up watching Cartoon Network and through its many inceptions. I still remember when Adult Swim first came out. You remember the original ads for Adult Swim was like fat guys in pools? That's how it started. And then they went into the AS symbol where they just did like weird niche stuff, and it's been that way ever since. But I remember that. I remember growing up with Cartoon Network, Chowder, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Kids Next Door. And then is Cartoon Network still going? I don't even know.
Kind of, but it's not much of cartoons these days.
Yeah, but a lot of that stuff. I mean, we had Scooby Doo and we had I don't know if Josie and the Pussycats still exist. Well, I guess the Archies probably still do.
I still remember Kids Next Door was peak. I remember Ed, and Eddie.
Yeah.
What else was
The
there?
Cosby Kids.
Courage the Cowardly Dog was definitely an acid trip of a show. I don't know what those animators were on, man. Like you have to animate every frame, and just that show was insane. I don't know what they were doing.
Well, in the old days, you had to draw 24 frames per second too. In the old days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, which meaning that, and I've also done current 3D animation. I've tried Blender. I've tried 3ds Max. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's actually really difficult to animate like Pixar does. It's very, very hard. It doesn't make it any easier that it's 3D. In fact, and some could argue, depending on your skill set, the transition from 2D to 3D actually got harder. But they did it for financial reasons, and they stood there. They kept it there. I'm surprised for the 100th year anniversary they didn't make Wish an entirely 2D animation. I feel like that would have been in good taste if they would have, but they didn't. They didn't commit to it. Instead, they made this weird mix of both. If you guys remember that. I never watched the movie, God forbid, but I saw the trailers and I saw the clips and I heard some of the songs and I said, "This is awful. This is genuinely awful."
I know that. Are you talking about Wish?
Yeah, Wish.
Oh, yeah. I like 2 songs from Wish, and that's just At All Costs and the This Is the Thanks I Get. mainly because I can use both of them to visualize stuff in my books. I haven't listened to the rest of them.
Okay.
They sound really bad. And the
I don't know,
story of Wish is asinine.
The premise is good. They had a good premise there. That's really interesting. A king learns sorcery, builds a kingdom from scratch. Like that's a good premise, but the execution is, I don't know. That has to be the worst Disney animated villain payoff I've ever seen. I watched movie recaps. I didn't bother watching that piece of crap, but I saw like a bunch of like recaps and synopses of it, and I'm like, wow, that's really bad. He reads from a book, and the book turns him evil. Yikes! It's
Yeah.
like, come on.
Let
Back
this be
the
lesson to
good
us
days,
all.
they had some balls, like with Ursula and King and Scar. You know, Scar going through that like great plan and actually succeeding. Scar is like the one Disney villain that succeeded and yet still ruined the kingdom
So,
because he's such an awful king.
so basically, someone read a book and he turned evil.
Yeah, it
that's what
feels
they
very
went for
much like
with
it was
Wish.
written by AI. And that's actually one of the prevailing theories is that it was written by AI.
So let this be a lesson to us all then.
Yeah.
No more books for
Yeah,
me.
if we're gonna write villains, let's write them like Hades from Hercules. All right. That's
And
my favorite type of villain archetype. Just like the jaded, like sassy
Huckster
villain.
Sailor.
That is
Huckster
great.
style salesman, and pretty much all of that is James Woods. Like everything about Hades is James Woods.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I would say that probably a lot of that is improvised by the actor. I don't know how much of Hades we can attribute to the writers versus James Woods just naturally funny comedic time. I mean, and especially
Oh yeah,
since
you're
like
dead right. Yeah.
especially since he fundamentally it was originally going to be a Hades all powerful Lord of the Dead, and he just was in a goofy mood that morning and just said, hey, I'm Hades, Lord of the Dead, how you doing?
I heard of that too. Yeah, I think I saw a video on that. We might have seen the same video. That originally it was one thing, and the creators behind the scenes loved his interpretation so much they rewrote the character around him and
Yeah.
let him fly off the handles, just go at it, man. And that's why it's so good. You're right. Yeah, it's all him. Every now and then you get like a work of media where the actor steals the show, whether it be the main character or the villain. I would say like Thanos stole the screen presence in Avengers Infinity War. And who else stole the screen? I had another example, I forgot it. I would say like Timothy stole the screen as Paul Atreides in Dune Part 2. Like he really, yeah, his screen presence as that like fallen messiah was excellent. You know,
Just
stuff like that.
Frollo in Hunchback.
We had a riot.
Yeah.
The number of anachronisms in the Hercules film.
Yeah.
How many did we get? Did we get over 100?
I think it was over 100. There's so many there are so many anachronisms in that movie. It's really funny.
What was the actor's name for Hades again?
James Woods.
James Woods. Frankly, that kind of jaded, like, hey, how's it going? I don't give a fuck. Shut up. You know, that kind of attitude is actually more believable for the character of Hades in Greek mythology than other interpretations of him. I find that to be personally more relatable. I could see, like, you know, him being screwed over by Zeus like that and being thrown down there. Yeah, I could see him acting exactly like that. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you'd be a bit cynical too.
I don't know. There's just something about me. I love jaded character archetypes. Snape from Harry Potter. I kid you not. Every scene, I rewatched all of the Harry Potter movies recently. Some didn't age very well. Some of them didn't age well at all. But every last scene that Snape was in, I died laughing because I loved it. Like, just Snape is just the best. That kind of just jaded character. Then you got Scar from Lion King, also jaded, and then Hercules. So, I mean, not Hercules, Hades from Hercules. I love that.
My Emperor Mputu is also a little jaded.
Was it your current emperor or the previous one?
Current one, the one who says sarcastic things all the time. That chap.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely caught some of that energy in your presentation. Oh, let's see this. And Valerian, I mentioned it before.
He was Hades, the lord of the underworld. And I guess everybody came in going, "Hello, I'm Hades," and I came in going, "Hey, Hades, how you doing? Nice to see you. Nice face." You know, so, and for some reason, I just was feeling kind of silly that day.
And his
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a good
Yeah.
clip.
Yeah,
Yeah, Valerian, I've mentioned that your villain, the other emperor, was the best interpretation of Peter Pan syndrome I've ever seen in a work of fiction. That's not a syndrome that's explored very often, but it's a real thing that you have like adults or like a man children who, you know, may have been born into royalty or something and quite literally never grow up. They could be 40 and they act like a 4-year-old. Yeah, that's a the execution of that was hilarious.
You never have to grow up if you're an absolute autocrat. You never have to grow up.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just funny. Those scenes that you had him in. I was disappointed when I found out that he died. I was like, oh, damn it. That could have made a really good villain, like long-term villain for that story.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, not my story.
There will be other villains.
Too bad I'm not writing a villain for Astradia. If I was, I would have a lot of fun with it, but there's not really a coherent villain. It's more like villains or like, you know, it's your usual horror story. So you got like supernatural stuff going on, malicious entities, if you will. So it's multiple. So, but God, I would love to write something like that where I write like a jaded type of villain, someone like Scar from Lion King. That's probably my favorite villain archetype. There's also Negan from The Walking Dead, both the comics and the TV. They're both like different but similar. And I just love that type of character that just has so much power that they just flaunt it and they're having fun. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. That's how you write good villains.
It was honestly very surprised. I didn't. I've never watched The Walking Dead, but I saw pictures of Hillary Burton, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's actual wife, was on The Walking Dead. I was just like, "Oh, that's cute."
I did not know that. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's ironic? It's ironic that probably my favorite villain performance of all time, which is Negan, happened in the worst season of that TV show. It's such a polar opposite. It's actually insane. Like Jeffrey Dean Morgan steals the show in every scene he's in because of the sheer depth of his acting. Like you could take those clips out of context and they're hilarious, or you can add like a clown track to it and it makes it really funny. But in the context of the scene, he's legitimately terrifying. He's legitimately horrifying because he's bantering, he's saying cheesy jokes, he's teasing everyone, and at any moment he can bash anyone's skull in and laugh about it and then like rub the skull in someone else's face and get away with it. That's like it's amazing how they were able to both have the best villain and also have the worst season 7 of The Walking Dead, which is an absolute mess. I don't know how how do you do that? Like, how do you have such a good villain stealing the show and yet have such a horribly written season? It's disappointing what happened to The Walking Dead.
I think part of it's just it's been around way too long is the main problem with it.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, didn't Game of Thrones go up to 8 seasons too?
The problem with Game of Thrones, it could have actually lasted longer. Like, the problem with Game of Thrones was that they truncated it more than
isn't the problem why they butchered the ending so bad is because they went off and did it themselves instead of waiting for George to finish it? Instead of trusting the source material, they went off source material and they butchered it really bad, right?
They ignored a good chunk of books 4 and 5, or
Ouch.
created Frankenstein's monster of the 2 with seasons 5 and 6, and did it really poorly. Another problem is that yes, with season 7 and 8 there was basically no source material to go off of, because George R. R. Martin is kind of lazy.
Yeah.
And either that or he has lost a lot of conviction. That's the only reason why I can, like, that's the most charitable assessment of why he's taken almost over 12
13 years, I think. But
years.
he's also a little depressed nowadays, to be fair. But yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is he's unfortunately got himself stuck between a rock and a hard place with this situation, because the longer that he waits to finish it, the worse it will be, because the higher the expectations will be. And it's just, damn, that I think that's probably the reason why he's not finished it, is because he knows that no matter how much, no matter what he does, it's going to get backlash. No matter what. That's insane. How do you get yourself stuck in a spot like that?
Yeah, he should just do it.
Yeah,
People say what they're gonna say, but he's not gonna finish it now, unfortunately.
Yeah, he may finish Winds of Winter, maybe.
He might.
Dream of Spring's a no-go. That's never going to come out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, and the problem is he keeps promising us he'll finish it. Like, given us multiple self-imposed due dates by himself. He's not, like, nobody's saying give it to us now by this date. He's often said, if I don't have it out by this date, you may imprison me until I finish it. I'm like, George.
He actually did say that.
George.
At least one occasion he actually did say that.
Yeah, there's been at least that one and maybe a couple other due dates where he said, like, if I don't have it done by this date, you can imprison me, or at the very least saying I will get it out by this date. And it's like, George, you're making promises you cannot keep, dude. Stop doing this. You're not making it easier on yourself.
Damn. That's unfortunate. Meanwhile, I'm over here. I'm just looking forward to Denis Villeneuve making Dune Messiah, because I think he announced that he's going to do it, but he's going to take his time with it. And I'm like, yes, sir, please. I love Dune Part 2. Yeah, I like that. And I want him to make. I want Dune to be the next Star Wars. It like, those two movies are so damn good. And then Star Wars is in the tanker, so it's like, okay, let's bring Dune into the front light.
Well, technically, Star Wars has been in the tanker since the 80s and early 90s.
Well, let's be honest here. Despite what we think of it, The Force Awakens popped off. It did really well. People loved that. People were hyped. People were excited for the future. And then it was just murdered. It was like a sword through the throat, straight through the gut. What's it called? The neck. I forgot the name of it. Jugular. Straight through the jugular with The Last Jedi.
Actually, funnily enough, like, when Valerian, he had never watched The Force Awakens, he was like, I can't tell which is worse, The Last Jedi or Force Awakens.
Actually, I think The Force Awakens might
Last
be
Jedi.
worse. The Force Awakens is probably worse.
No, The Last Jedi is much worse.
It started the whole problem. I mean, it started the whole problem in the first place. I mean, the whole premise was off.
It is technically a copy and paste, yes, but at least it had some good redeeming moments in it. Force Awakens, it had some good stuff in it. It had good CGI, and then it looked good, sounded good. The characters seemed interesting because they were just being introduced. There was potential there, and then it was just murdered in the next one.
Yeah,
they were like, nah. Yeah. Instead of making Luke like an old wise, instead of making him like an Obi-Wan, we're gonna make him jaded. Probably the worst character you could have made jaded. Luke was never a jaded type of person. He was always an inspired, ambitious, heroic kind of guy that wants to do better, do more. God, I hate what Kathleen Kennedy did to Star Wars, man, and she's still in charge.
Which is weird because most of her projects have been, especially of late, with Willow and the Acolyte being pretty bad disasters.
And it seems to be that the more she gets involved in something, the worse it is. Like the
Yeah.
Acolyte, I saw stuff behind the scenes that she and Leslie got along really well and
Same with
resonated
her
really
and
strong.
Ryan. Her and Ryan also. Like her and Ryan got like she was very clearly hands off with Ryan. I don't think that she was as hands off with J.J. Abrams on Rise of Skywalker, or J.J. Abrams is just a people pleasing moron.
Dude, there is no hope for Star Wars. The only hope for Star Wars, I feel like, would be a fresh restart in the hands of someone who has a great track record. So let's say, for example, out of nowhere, let's say James Gunn decided to make a Star Wars movie, or the Russo brothers said, you know what, we're going to make the next Star Wars movie. That would perk my eyebrows. I would go, okay, I'm intrigued. I would wait till it came out because I wouldn't trust it, obviously. I wouldn't trust the studio, Lucasfilm, if they wouldn't like butcher it behind the scenes. But if the Russo brothers made like a Star Wars movie instead of, I don't know, Charmin Obaid Chinoy, if it was them instead, that would actually have some hope to it. And that's kind of how I feel about the current like Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret War thing. I go, okay, it's the Russo brothers, so I got a little bit of hope for those, but I also know the studio is in complete shambles at the same time, so I guess we're going to have to wait and see in this case. Feels like Gunn is done with Disney for now. Yeah, they kind of stabbed him in the back.
Yeah, since they kicked him off of Guardians 3 temporarily, admittedly, but they still kicked him off.
And I can tell too in the first act of the movie, the first act of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is different than the second and third act. The second and third act feel more natural and organic. The first act feels weird. It feels off. You know what I mean? Like it feels like someone else directed it and they just kept it in. And then the second and third act feel like it's back to James's style. And he has a really good style. I love the stuff that he's made.
Well, I think we should conclude it there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you guys all later. We'll be back with Rings of Power. Oh, gosh. That sounds terrible. That sounds terrible.
No. That's a great place to end it. What if Snyder joined Star Wars and made Rebel Moon canon? Oh, that is cursed. That's cursed.
Oh, man.
I'll probably join the Rings of Power one unless I'm working. I got a new job, so might be working.
We might not be doing it tomorrow.
Well, it depends, since my little sister, we're celebrating my little sister's birthday tomorrow at 2:30, and I'm not sure when it will be finished, probably around 5 or 5, depending. I'm just not sure.
Are you going to be watching like the most recent episode? I saw the Critical Drinker do a breakdown on it. Yikes. You're in for a treat if it's that one. A bad treat, I mean.
Yeah, his thumbnail looks pretty bad. Makes it look really, really bad. And generally, he's got a pretty good track record when it comes to assessing quality. I can't think of very many movies he's been wrong about.
That one specifically, he did a really good analysis comparing the entirety of the Battle of Helm's Deep and how it progressed. And then he compared it to the new one, and it kind of speaks for itself. You'll see.
Anyway.
All right. Well,
see you guys later.
All right. See you later.
All right.
I mean it metaphorically or rhetorically or poetically or theoretically or in any other fancy